3:42 a.m. Every night for the past week, I've woken up at exactly 3:42 a.m. Not approximately, not around that time, precisely 3:42. According to my phone, my digital alarm clock, and the watch I've started keeping beside my bed to confirm I'm not imagining things. It started last Tuesday. I'd gone to bed at my usual time, around 11:30, after scrolling through social media for too long as usual. Nothing unusual about the day. Work had been busy but manageable, dinner was leftover pasta, and I'd called my mom like I do every week. Normal life stuff. I jolted awake with that unmistakable feeling of something being wrong. You know that sensation, when your body recognizes danger before your conscious mind catches up. My heart was already racing when I opened my eyes to my pitch-dark bedroom. 3:42 a.m. I lay perfectly still, listening. My one-bedroom apartment was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing on the street below. After a few minutes of nothing, I convinced myself it was just one of those random wake-ups everyone experiences. Probably stress from the project deadline coming up. I rolled over and eventually fell back asleep. The next night, I made sure to avoid caffeine after 4 p.m. I even skipped my usual evening scroll session, opting to read a book instead, supposedly better for sleep. I drifted off easily around 11, and woke up at 3:42 a.m. This time, the feeling was stronger. Not just wrongness, but a distinct sensation of not being alone. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat as I stared into the darkness, eyes straining to make out shapes beyond my bedroom door, which I always leave slightly ajar because fully closing it makes the room too stuffy. Nothing moved in the darkness. No sound besides my own breathing, which I was trying desperately to keep steady and quiet. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, I reached for my phone and turned on the flashlight, sweeping it around the room and then through the doorway into my small living room. Empty. Of course it was empty. The third night was when I started to get genuinely scared. Despite taking a melatonin and falling into a deep sleep, my eyes snapped open at, you guessed it, 3:42 a.m. This time I was drenched in sweat, my t-shirt sticking to my chest. More disturbing was the fact that I was sitting upright in bed, with no memory of having done so. I knew I hadn't been dreaming. The transition from sleep to complete alertness had been instant, like a switch had been flipped. And now I was fully awake, my skin prickling with goosebumps despite the sweat. That's when I noticed the smell. Just the faintest trace of something burning, not like food or an electrical fire, but like hair or fingernails. It was subtle enough that I questioned whether I was imagining it. I got out of bed that night and checked every outlet, unplugged non-essential electronics, even felt the walls for unusual warmth. Nothing. The smell had already dissipated, if it had ever been there at all. I messaged my friend Mia the next day, trying to sound casual. Hey, random question. Have you ever had a period where you woke up at exactly the same time every night? She replied quickly. Like when my son was a newborn and I had to feed him at 2 a.m.? Laugh emoji. No, more like without an obvious reason. I keep waking up at 3:42 on the dot and it's creeping me out. Probably stress. Or maybe your upstairs neighbor has a weird schedule? Our bodies are sensitive to patterns. That made sense. The guy above me did sometimes work nights. Maybe he was coming home or taking a shower at that time. I felt better having a potential explanation. Until night 4, when I woke at 3:42 a.m. to the distinct sound of footsteps in my living room. Light, careful steps. The kind someone makes when they're trying not to be heard. I lay frozen in bed, not breathing. My phone clutched in my hand with 911 pre-dialed. The footsteps stopped. Then came a soft scraping sound, like furniture being carefully moved. I've never considered myself particularly brave, but something about the calculated nature of those movements filled me with more anger than fear. This was my apartment. If someone had broken in, they had violated the one place I was supposed to feel safe. I turned on my bedside lamp, grabbed the baseball bat I'd put there the day before, I'm not stupid, and walked to my bedroom doorway. The living room was empty. The front door was still chained from the inside. All windows locked. Nothing appeared disturbed. I checked the entire apartment. closets, behind the shower curtain, under the bed. I even looked in the fridge and cabinets, though logically I knew no adult could fit there. Nothing. That's when I noticed my couch had moved about 2 inches from where it normally sat. I didn't sleep again that night. In the morning light, I convinced myself I must have bumped the couch earlier while vacuuming and not noticed. The footsteps must have been from upstairs, or a dream that had merged with waking. I was starting to question my sanity, so I decided to be methodical. That evening, I took photos of every room in my apartment, paying special attention to the exact placement of furniture. I set up my laptop to record video of the living room all night. And I took a sleeping pill, hoping to sleep through whatever 3:42 a.m. had in store. It didn't work. My eyes opened at 3:42 a.m., feeling like they'd been pried apart. The sleeping pill left me groggy, my limbs heavy, but my mind was alert to the absolute silence of my apartment. No footsteps tonight, just the absence of the normal sounds. No refrigerator hum, no heating system, not even street noise. I felt like I was in a vacuum. The silence so complete it seemed to have physical presence pressing against my eardrums. Then my bedroom door slowly swung shut. I hadn't touched it. There wasn't a draft. It moved with deliberate slowness until it clicked closed. I couldn't move, the sleeping pill weighing my body down while my mind screamed to get up. The doorknob began to turn, rotating gradually, the internal mechanism making a faint clicking sound. Using every ounce of willpower, I broke through the pharmaceutical paralysis and lunged for my phone, turning on the flashlight just as the door began to open again. The light revealed nothing on the other side. The door continued to open until it touched the wall, revealing my empty living room. I didn't sleep the rest of the night, sitting upright with every light on, the baseball bat across my lap. In the morning, I checked my laptop recording with shaking hands. At 3:42 a.m., the video showed static for exactly 1 minute before resuming normal recording of my undisturbed living room. I called out of work and spent the day researching carbon monoxide poisoning, temporal lobe seizures, and sleep disorders. Anything that could explain what was happening. I even called my landlord to ask if previous tenants had ever reported strange occurrences. He just laughed and said, "Like what, ghosts? The building's only 15 years old, not exactly haunted mansion material." I bought a carbon monoxide detector. Normal. I checked all the locks again. Secure. I even asked my neighbor if he'd heard anything strange. He hadn't. Last night, I was determined to break the pattern. I went to stay at Mia's place, not telling her the full story, just saying my heating was acting up. I slept on her couch, her husband and 5-year-old son asleep down the hall, finding comfort in the presence of other humans. I woke up at 3:42 a.m. The living room was dark except for the glow of the cable box. Unlike at my apartment, I didn't feel afraid here. Just confused and increasingly frustrated at my broken brain or circadian rhythm or whatever was causing this. Then I heard a small voice. "Who are you talking to?" Mia's son stood in the hallway entrance, clutching a stuffed dinosaur, his eyes reflecting the dim light. "I'm not talking to anyone, buddy," I whispered. "Just woke up for a minute. You should go back to bed." He tilted his head, looking not at me, but at the empty space next to the couch. "But you were talking to the tall man." Every hair on my body stood on end. "What tall man?" I asked, my mouth dry. He pointed to the empty corner. "The one who followed you here. He's bending down to whisper in your ear." I felt it then, the faintest breath against my ear, carrying that same burnt smell from before. I'm writing this from my car, outside a 24-hour diner where I've been since 4 a.m. Mia thinks I got an early start to drive to my parents' house a few hours away. She doesn't know I have no intention of going there and putting them at risk. It's 3:41 p.m. now. In 12 hours, it'll be 3:41 a.m. And a minute after that, I don't know what's happening to me. I don't know if I'm experiencing some kind of mental break or if there's actually something following me. All I know is that child saw something I couldn't. And children don't make up very specific details like tall men whispering in people's ears. I haven't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch in a week. I'm writing this because I need someone, anyone, to know what's happening. In case tonight is different. In case tonight, at 3:42 a.m., I find out what it wants. Because the most terrifying possibility isn't that I'm losing my mind. It's that I'm perfectly sane and something impossible has taken an interest in me. And it's patient enough to claim just 1 minute of every night until it's ready for more. And that was 3:42 a.m. by Technical Ad 9713. It's a interesting designation there. So, what I really like about this story, 3:42 a.m., it's got such great logic, right? This protagonist, main character, whatever you want to call them, they go through this crazy cycle of basically a ritual routine sort of changes whatever their sleeping cycle is, and they're always waking up at 3:42 a.m. They don't know what's going on, right? And there's not exactly noise. There's nothing really out of the ordinary, except for the fact that, yeah, yet again, there's the strange silence compared to like typical white noise, background noise that you might hear of electrical humming of, say, a refrigerator, things like that. There's just nothing. There's nothingness to it, and yet he keeps waking up every time at 3:42 a.m., which is always a weird one. If it's going to be like so specifically precise on the dot, like I mean, we've all had times where we wake up randomly in the night. You know what I mean? Or I guess for some people in the day. And, you know, it's sometimes it's like, it's just because you have to go pee, or maybe there's a certain noise. And yeah, it might be like roughly around, say, 2 a.m., 4 a.m., or whatever, but it's never precisely. It's never precisely a time every single time, right? So obviously that's the weird occurrence here. And then it begins the investigation, the ruling out of things. For example, you know, with the carbon monoxide, is there some kind of an issue with that? Is there maybe a weird ritual that my neighbor does, and that surprisingly wakes me up at this specific time every single day? Maybe it's, you know, I try melatonin. Let's try not having caffeine after 4 p.m. They're ruling out all these other things. So I love the fact that it's not just immediately like, oh my God, my place is haunted. No. They do their absolute best to just rule everything else out. And I love that. I love that because, yet again, it reminds you of how you see many horror movies, shows, books, whatever, where characters just kind of, you know, they don't do that. You know, they do the dumb stuff, right? We all know it. And it's never great. It's entertaining. But, you know, you find yourself frustrated and you yell at the screen and stuff, right? And I feel that. I'm sure we've all done it. I know I certainly have quite a number of times, especially watching things like, Evil Dead, Friday the 13th, Final Destination, just to name a few. And I think it's great. And then the problem is there's nothing obvious, so they end up doing pictures to make sure. It looked like the couch moved. Let me take some pictures of a before and after kind of sequence. See if it happens again. Let me do a recording of the living room. See if I can catch anything. The thing that I was confused about, though, was the fact that they dismissed the fact that for an entire minute of the laptop video recording, so everything clearly worked, except for when it hit 3:42 a.m. and then for an entire minute it was just static, and they just kind of, it just felt like that was played off, like it was, I guess there was a problem. You had no other issues except for that. Like, you think if anything that's kind of solidifying in your mind that something's up with this time, right? And I suppose then, for me, I would be like, okay, well, what else could I test, right? Which, I suppose that's just me. But it's not like their logic was bad when it came to trying to figure out what the problem was. Of course not. No, we clearly just had different ideas at that regard. I still really enjoyed it. I thought it was a crazy cool story. I think I like the fact that, you know, he ended up staying at Mia's place, what was it, coworker, and you know, the kid was like the crux in this, the fact that they saw this tall figure, the thing that has been haunting this person, and they didn't even know it. It was a great little reveal, a great little moment. Yet again, another fantastic example of how children or animals even can see things that we can't. I think it's great. I think it's really great. I don't know how that works all the time in logic for me, because I'm like, well, why can kids see it but then adults can't? But at the same time, you know, then it defaults to me thinking of like, well, it's also like with sound, right? Kids can hear higher pitches than we can, and over the years, like we kind of lose a level of that, which kind of sucks. But, you know, I suppose maybe there's a little bit of logic when it comes to that as well. When it comes to the realm of the dead, I'm not sure, you know, because you think then wouldn't they also hear that stuff, even though we can't? I don't know. Confusing. Too much thought. Clearly, it's hard to define all that shit. It's not like it's all set in stone, right? No, I really enjoyed the story. I'm really curious as to what happened. Clearly, they are followed, I suppose. I don't feel like possessed is the right word. Followed, I would say, is more the right word, because obviously the fact they ended up at a different house and it still happened, yeah, I suppose followed is the more appropriate word. By, it could be a ghost. I feel like it's a more malevolent entity, though. It does feel like it's a little bit more intense, and maybe slowly over time they're gaining power. They're figuring out what they can do, and I guess inevitably they're either going to kill this person or take them over, will be my guess. That's usually what I would think, right? That's like the two worst things that can happen to a person with a entity or spirit, right? Is either possession or death. Yeah. No, I super enjoyed it. I thought this was a great story. I'm really glad I got to read it. I sure hope you guys did too. I thought it was awesome. Let me know down in the comments below what you think this entity is. You know, is there a specific type that you can think of? Is there maybe a certain malevolent spirit, for example, or a yokai or something? I'm really curious what your thoughts are. I really wouldn't know. I really wouldn't know. It does make me think of like a Babadook, even though it doesn't sound like they look like one. You know, but I would say they have the general mannerisms of a Babadook, even though I don't. Besides the movie, I've never heard of a Babadook. Is that an actual thing in established like lore? I have no idea. It always makes me laugh. There's a Babadook. I think it's or the What We Do in the Shadows version. It's like the Gobbledygook or something. I love that. I love that shit. It's very funny. As for movies and shows and stuff, this makes me think of. I'd say the first one that comes to mind, and probably really the only one, sadly, that comes closest, I would say, is Paranormal Activity. Simply because it's not a full on belief that there's paranormal activity going on, but then they do inevitably set up like in-home security cameras and everything and capture activity that happens during certain times of the night. Yeah, that's kind of the only one really that pops off that feels the most similar. I mean, I did think of things like The Haunting, which it's not exactly the same, but it's kind of more the belief of like, you know, it's not exactly a ghost type situation going on, and it's other things, and there's like they're doing like a sleep study, for example. I think it was like an insomnia study, if I remember right. But yeah, there ends up being like a paranormal activity. And the only other one maybe would be Insidious, which yet again it's the belief that they don't think it's paranormal activity going on, right? A ghost or whatever. But their son goes into a comatose state, if I remember correctly, and throughout a period of things that kind of happen, basically, it's not a ghost. It's I suppose it's more like demonic entities. I think there's more than one, if I remember correctly off the top of my head. It's a great movie, great movies to be honest, but they don't quite reach the same similarities as Paranormal Activity, I would say. It's just because, yet again, that they do deal with the fact that they don't immediately jump to the conclusion of it's ghosts, you know, and they do a base level investigation, but it's not quite the same. It's more, I guess, any kind of ghost hunting show, really, or even YouTube series would probably be maybe. But again, they're more trying to find evidence of ghosts. It's tricky. It's really tricky. Yeah. Yet again, it's just off the top of my head. I feel like if I really got to sit down and grind through some stuff, I feel like I could probably find far better examples, but I did not. So, just being honest. Yeah. So this has been 3:42 a.m. I've really enjoyed it, and I sure hope you have too. This has been Nate at Night, and we will see you for whatever's next. Take care out there. My neighbor's kids won't stop knocking on my door. They've been dead for 5 years. It started again last night. 3 soft knocks at the door, just after 2 a.m., the exact same as it's been for the past 4 nights. I know I shouldn't open it. I know what I saw. But when you hear children's voices whispering your name in the dark, when you see their silhouettes pressed against the frosted glass, it's hard to pretend you're not just a little bit hopeful that it's all been some horrible mistake. The Wilson kids died 5 years ago. Their house caught fire in the middle of the night. Faulty wiring, they said. By the time anyone noticed the smoke, it was already too late. The family was trapped upstairs. The whole street woke up to their screams. I did too. But I didn't do anything. I stood in my window and watched the flames eat their house alive. I told myself it was too late. That by the time I got outside, I couldn't have helped anyway. But I heard the knocking. Even then, faint and desperate, just like now. I think it came from inside the walls. The parents' bodies were found together, melted into the charred bed frame. But the kids, they were never found. Just tiny handprints on the floorboards, leading to the front door. That door had claw marks in it. Deep ones. The cops thought wild animals had gotten in. But wild animals don't knock. Last night, I finally opened the door. There was no one there. But the knocking didn't stop. It was coming from the walls now. And it's not just knocking anymore. They're talking. I can hear them behind the drywall, giggling and whispering, scraping their fingernails along the inside. They're moving, room to room, closer. They keep asking why I didn't help them, why I watched, why I did nothing. I tried to tell them I was scared, that I didn't know what to do. They didn't like that answer. I don't think they're going to leave this time. My lights are flickering. The air smells like smoke, and I can see tiny handprints forming on the wall beside me. They're inside the house now, and they're not alone. I didn't sleep. After the handprints appeared on the wall, I locked myself in the bathroom and turned the lights off. I don't know why, like hiding would help. I sat in the bathtub with a knife I found in the drawer. Like that would make a difference. They didn't try to break in. They didn't have to. Around 3:15 a.m., the whispering started again. Not just the kids this time. Another voice joined them. Deeper. Slower. Like it was learning how to speak. The children sounded afraid of it. I heard one of them say, "He's awake again." Then silence. And then the scratching started. Not at the walls this time. From inside the mirror. I swear I'm not crazy. I watched as a small crack formed in the center of the glass, spiderwebbing outward like pressure was building behind it. Something moved on the other side, just beneath the surface. I turned away, and when I looked back, the mirror was normal again. But my reflection wasn't. It blinked when I didn't. I left the bathroom when the sun came up. I thought maybe daylight would push them back, like they were tied to the night somehow. But now things are different. It's not just the walls. It's the photos, too. Every picture in my house with people in it. Friends, family, even old school photos. All of their eyes are gone. Scratched out. But there's something worse. The Wilson kids are in them now. Standing in the background. Watching. One of them is behind me in the picture on my fridge. Smiling. I'm in the photo, too. I don't remember taking it. I don't remember ever smiling like that. I left the house around noon and drove until my gas light came on. Parked in some diner lot an hour out of town. I've been sitting here for hours. I don't know where to go. But they do. There's a note under my windshield wiper, written in crayon. "Why did you leave the door open?" I didn't. I swear I closed it. Unless... No, I locked it. I know I did. I'm going home now. I have to. I think whatever was with them got out. I think it's wearing me, pretending to be me. And if that's true, then who's been driving my car for the last 10 minutes? And that was My Neighbor's Kids Won't Stop Knocking on My Door. They've been dead for 5 years by Pentyworth223. So, this story is awesome. I like the fact that it's not crazy long. It doesn't take a long time to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of, the details that you want. I do wish there was a little bit more detail, perhaps in some of the events, because I feel like it's kind of gives us highlights. And I feel like there could be built up just a little bit more if we had a little bit more depth to some of the details of the situations, especially with the fact that, they're able to kind of basically come into the house, quote unquote, and there also is something else with them that they are afraid of, right? It's good. It's really good. I'm very intrigued. The problem is I don't have enough info. I wish I did. I wish I had just a little bit more detail going on. But that's the only real critique, if I'm honest. I really enjoyed this story quite a lot. It's short, sweet, to the point. It's punchy. It hits just right. I'm hoping that the sound effect ideas I had for this have gone well. I feel like they would have at this point, but I wouldn't know now because I'm doing this after I just read the story, so it's fresher in my mind. It makes more sense. So Editor Nathan will he'll know what's up. So here's the thing. So when it comes to what this makes me think of, like right away, makes me think of the movie Oculus, because yet again, it's only just because of the mirror motif, if you ask me, is the only real reason why I kind of bring up the movie Oculus, because they're basically it's these two siblings who are convinced that there's like an antique mirror responsible for the death of like their family and stuff, and I'm like, okay, even though the mirror is not the reason why they died, but it perhaps is a gateway for them to enter the real world or something along those lines. I'm not sure, because I also feel like it's the catalyst for the stealing of the identity of the man. I'm assuming it's a man. It could be a woman. I'm afraid I don't know. Regardless, that's the only real connection there. It also made me think of The Conjuring 2, because yet again, it's a family that is plagued by. I mean, in this case, they label it as a poltergeist, the Enfield poltergeist. Even though there's actually more going on as well, like the fact that when the Warrens show up, they end up bringing their own issue as well. I'm not going to obviously spoil too much. Like, if you haven't seen it, it's a great horror movie. But like, it's not a perfect connection. Yet again, it's more like a family that is being tormented by a dangerous entity that may or may not be a ghost. It could be a demon. I get the feeling it's a little bit more demonic in the neighbor's kid story, just based on the somewhat subtle description of the fact that deeper, slower, probably a little bit more menacing. And the fact that it can also, like, copy people's appearance, I mean, is weird. So, like, I guess demons can do that? I don't really know, if I'm completely honest with you. There's probably, like, certain demons that could do that, I'm sure. Of course, that makes sense. But otherwise, it makes me think of, like, shapeshifters and anything else that can, I suppose, mimics. Mimics could copy a form. If there's specific demons that can do it, please let me know in the comments below so I can learn something today. Because otherwise, I got to Google it, and I feel like I'll get a lot of weird answers. I also found out upon researching mirrors, funnily enough, there's actually a 2008 film called Mirrors with Kiefer Sutherland, out of all people, and I haven't seen this, so I'm gonna have to put that on my list to watch, because apparently it's based on like a Korean, what is it, a South Korean horror film? Into the Mirror. Okay. That's yeah. I do like me some Korean stuff. I'll have to check that out. Yeah, that's been cool. I've quite enjoyed the story. I sure hope you have too. I need to do some work. I really do. But Pentyworth, thank you yet again for this opportunity. Thank you yet again, Nate at Nighters, for being here and having a good time with me. We will we'll catch you for whatever's next. Cheers, peeps. The Old Man in the Cellar. And what did really happen in that sleepy suburb? Trigger warning. Suicide. As a child, I was told not to play by the old coal mine camp. I was old enough to know it probably was because of safety. The mine was abandoned quite a while back. I thought, in that stubborn child's pseudo-wisdom that only very young children seem to truly possess, that it would be fine. There wasn't a way into the mine anymore. I was smart enough not to go into the mine. The usual child justification for sating curiosity. That day, no one seemed to notice me, and I just kind of wandered off. I only wondered if they might miss me for a brief time, and honestly, I kind of forgot about, everyone. About everything else, really. I was there. It felt solemn, important, and sad. There was a weight in the very air. The kind of feeling you only get when you're somewhere that people were, but just up and left. Left it all the same, and just took off. And you don't know why. I was right at the side of the first building on the edge of the whole thing, which I thought was the perfect compromise. It might very well have been if I hadn't noticed a gap, which gave perfect access to what seemed like a root cellar. I thought that was odd, since I would have thought that it with being since I would have thought that with it being near a mine, there wouldn't be any other underground structures like that. I figured it would be fine to go into, if I could even manage to squeeze in, since the mine clearly wouldn't be out in the direction and it didn't look like a mine from what I could see. Surprisingly, I did squeeze in, and I found that while it did appear to be an old root cellar, it was connected to the mine. I was confused, but I also had to find my way out. The way I've come in was just too high. The thing is, while I did find a way out, which in fact all but confirmed that the start of it was a cellar, honestly, I also had found something strange in a side part of it. In a small side room separated by a wall of dirt, with just a doorway cut out and reinforced, there was an old man, sitting all alone. "What are you doing here?" I asked, bewildered at the fact that an old person, an adult, was just sitting down in this place. He regarded me with a sort of softness of expression that somehow felt both kind and intense for what felt like ages, before he softly replied, "No one wants me." I knew the feeling. I didn't know why I knew the feeling. I just knew that if I stayed down there forever, no one would miss me. In the kind of certainty that has nothing to do with anything in particular. The way your instincts just know when something bad is going to happen, even though there's genuinely no actual signs this is the case. And with the same certainty, I knew that he meant to die there. That he'd specifically gone there to die. I was too young to know about suicide. Had no reason to know anything about it. But I was absolutely certain that he meant to kill himself. I knew deep down that he was going to. Except I was there. And he wasn't going to in front of me. Why not? How did I know? I don't know. That's just what I knew. So I waited with him. There in the room, there was a bit of light from a source I couldn't place. It wasn't sunlight, I didn't think. It felt like I sat there for days listening to him and bonding with him. Felt like days and days. But it couldn't have been because I didn't get hungry. I didn't get thirsty. I didn't have to go to the bathroom. I just sat, and eventually tried to will myself not to sleep. If I slept, he surely was going to die. My eyelids got heavier and heavier, and then I was out. I woke with a start. I couldn't have been out that long. Jolting my head up, I saw him. Hanging. Not facing me at first, but his body somehow slowly turning to face me. And in that moment I knew. I knew deep down the terrible truth that he'd already done it before we had even met. He was already dead. I didn't know how, but I saw everything in the moment his cloudy dead eyes met mine. My mind broke in that moment. Not irreparably, but in that self-preservation sort of way. Because even though I can't remember exactly, I know I saw it all. I saw why he'd done it. I think it was way back when the mines were open. I don't know. The most freaky part of all is the next thing I know I'm a young adult. I'm in a pristine and very sparsely furnished house. I know things happened between the cellar and then, but I can't recall. This doesn't bother me for some reason. It's just the way it is. I guess this is when I came back to myself. When I finally really got past what I'd seen and what had happened. I had no interest in trying to dig up memories. I broke a small nightstand and started a fire in the living room. I don't know why. Just that's what I'd been doing when I came back to true consciousness, so that's what I was going to do. The man was there in the room. The fire didn't feel warm to me. It didn't burn much outside of the nightstand, and a bit of carpet singeing. Not much smoke either, really. The man was just standing slightly behind, slightly beside me. Solemn as the place I'd found him. Solemn as the grave. I knew he'd been with me this whole time. In that moment, I was almost tempted to try to remember. But something inside me stopped me. After all, what did it matter? What good would it do? We were there. He'd been looking out for me. That much I knew. It was okay. Except, what if the people come back? He asked me softly. Concern evident in his voice. I shook my head slightly, and spoke with a conviction which the origin of still remains a mystery to me. They won't. Not after what happened. No one will come here ever again after what happened. In this moment, I had a bit of a terrible thought that I was dead. I didn't know how it would have happened, but that was the only way this would make sense. Except I knew deep down that wasn't true. Something was wrong, off, but it wasn't that. I couldn't put my finger on it. I could see in my mind's eye the rows of houses, pristine and bright white despite years of being avoided. Identical, or very near identical. All in 2 rows, one on each side of the street. They'd left behind enough that I knew I'd be okay for a while at least. They'd barely been there at all. There was some furniture in some of the houses, some supplies, a little of everything, but not much of anything. My mind touched on the edge of the heart of it all, rebelled against it, pushed gently, feeling a lot like a strong breeze might push both firmly and yet gently. I awoke with a start. I knew I was remembering something important, something I'd forgotten. That was why there were pieces missing, why I'd known some things. That was how I knew the man was already dead, how he had already been dead. He was stuck in his pain and misery, stuck in his grief and reliving his suicide for as long as he was alone. And then I showed up, a little thing that he cared about and cared about him. There was something weird about that old mine. Never could put my finger on it. But the structural safety wasn't the reason they up and left. Damn sure wasn't a lack of coal. I'd seen plenty left both unmined and even mined and left. There was something wrong with that place. Maybe I was there for days, because that side room, once you entered, you were somewhere else. The doorway, it was just gone. It was like a tomb in a way, and honestly, when it comes down to it, I guess it was the old man's tomb. To this day, I don't know how I got out, but I must have. I don't remember how I ended up out in the world after growing up, on my own except for the old man. Hell, I don't even remember his name. I can't explain it, but it's almost like part of me never left that place. Not really. That once I found that place, once I crossed the threshold, part of me was stuck, and that suburb was just part of the whole pocket of the universe? Multiverse? That there had always been a part of me with him that grew up knowing a terrible secret. Sometimes when I can't sleep, I remember, and a deep feeling of dread permeates my entire being. What happened in that little suburb so that people avoided it so completely? And how was it in such perfect shape after what I knew to be years and years? It reminds the old flooded town in the swamp, where everything above the water, which besides the church isn't really much, is just way too clean. But even that's a distant memory. Way more distant than this one even. I feel like what I know is walled off completely now. They're cursed places. Deeply cursed. It sometimes eats me alive inside, knowing I should know how. Should know why. I did know once, and now I can't recall. What parts are here? Which parts are there? I feel like there's something I should know. That if I just knew what questions to ask, the answers would be out there for me to find. I don't have any idea where to start. Sometimes I think they're the same place. Time doesn't exactly seem to flow the same there, after all. And that was The Old Man in the Cellar, and What Did Really Happen in That Sleepy Suburb, by Chaos Azeroth. Always makes me think of World of Warcraft as that. Right. So, I'll be honest, it took me a few read-throughs to kind of really decipher, at least what I think is going on in the story. It does seem like there is some fuck-aroundery when it comes to this bizarre old mining camp town place, right? Which I know from other mining towns, they tend to obviously build towns nearby, or even in some cases completely surrounding it, so that way they can employ miners, they can employ the workers. So it's like the idea of a factory town, right? You put your workers near where they work, so they don't have to commute so far, and blah 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 blah. And clearly, some tragic accident happened there, somewhat. But at the same time, it doesn't seem like that's the reason for the closing down, right? We understand that not even the fact of the lack of coal or anything, that there wasn't a tragic, there might have been a tragic accident, but that's not the reason for the place to become abandoned in some kind of like, what seems like maybe a museum kind of a place. I'm not entirely sure, because the protagonist does make it seem like people, like they're leaving people, which makes me think of like a tour group. But I could be wrong. They could just be talking about like in a general sense. Um, but I believe what's happened is they have found this side room. So they found obviously the ruins and everything, and that they find this side room where the old man has died, but he's been dead for quite some time. But what he's obviously seeing is almost like a, maybe not exactly a purgatory type situation, but he's able to see the old man in a sense, maybe in a spirit form or a ghost form or something like that. He's seeing like a reflection of him in time. And I think the thing is, so he gets to see what the old man is maybe been stuck in his loop, right? Like his mental maybe blocking loop, which allows him to move on because of obviously his life experiences and the things that have happened to him and stuff like that. The things that are keeping him trapped on this mortal plane, right? If we're talking paranormal terms, based on our understanding of things, whether it's all true or not is another arguable point. But I'm merely trying to work with what I believe could be the case. And what I find really interesting is the fact that our protagonist also occasionally believes that these are their own memories as well. It's like they're blending together. But I mean, I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? If you are suddenly living through somebody else's life, their memories, I can understand why you would believe that, you're mistaking it for your own. Because it's strange to step into somebody else's shoes, literally. So I totally understand that. I think that's a great touch. I don't fully understand everything. I'll be completely honest with you. I feel like a little bit of the word structure is a little confusing, and it did take me a little bit of a read through, like I said. But it was so clear enough that I understood. I like a lot of the descriptor words. I like a lot of the tension, the feelings, and the sadness and the dread. It should be an emotional toil, right? Because this yet again, it deals with a heavy subject, and it's not something that should be taken lightly or mocked or joked about. These are serious things that need to be taken seriously, and it deserves that kind of respect, And ultimately, we always have to remember that if you were dealing with any kind of thoughts like this yourself, or anybody who is struggling with these kind of suicidal tendencies, thoughts, issues, help is always available. I'm sure I'll pop down a couple of resources down in the description below, because it's only polite. And it's I'm just doing my public service by saying you are not alone. Help is available. People do care. Stop thinking they don't. Obviously, that doesn't cure it. So, merely just trying to help. I'm just trying to help. I personally have lost a few people to suicide, so I do understand the hardcore, like, depth of how it can make people feel. I personally haven't really had those kind of thoughts myself, but I think I think I would never want to succumb to something like that, right? I would never want to go into that kind of a depth. I'm so stubborn in the fact that I refuse to ever go that low in my own mental fortitude and state, right? And I mean, a lot of people, they don't get that luxury. They don't. A lot of people deal with a lot more problems than we can even remotely imagine. And I'm not going to try to make it seem like, haha. And I'm not going to make it seem like these people do not deserve this help. Of course they do. Everybody has different battles and different demons that they're dealing with, And we should be mindful of that. We should. Anyway, that's... Sorry, I'm just coughing a lot today. That's all I'm going to touch on that today. Ay. I am all of a sudden just... Ugh. I'm still on the tail end of my sickness, to be fair. So, I do apologize, but I knew I needed to get back into the studio and doing some proper work. And I feel like this is a great little story to kind of start with. It should make you think. And I really I really appreciate that kind of a thing. It's always nice when you have a story that just really, sits with you afterwards, right? And so, Chaos, thank you for that. I think it's powerful. I think it's important, and I really hope it makes people a little bit more aware, a little bit more curious about their own thoughts and thoughts of their loved ones. I really do. Hug somebody you care about today. Do it for me. It's your homework. You gotta fucking do it. And if anybody asks why'd you do that, say Nate at Night told me to do it. You have my permission. You can blame me. Thank you so much for watching. I love all of you. Take care out there. Everyone thinks I killed my own brother. But I didn't. As I walk into the police station, I notice the officer's eyes on me, watching every move, judging. Did she do it? Did she really kill her own brother? That's the question on everyone's mind after Greg died last week. He fell to his death from the 11th floor apartment where we live with our mother. Neighbors mentioned a heated argument between us right before it happened, and the media ate it up. An older, polite officer approaches and gestures for me to follow him into the interview room. He motions for me to sit. I'm sorry about all this, Miss Lana, he says, flipping through some papers in a folder. But we need to get everything straight in this case. I nod. He asks if I'm sure I don't want a lawyer. I confirm it. He sets the papers aside and opens a small notebook, a pen resting inside. Can you tell me how your relationship with your brother was? That's a tricky question, but I tell him the truth. It wasn't great. My brother was controlling and aggressive from a young age. He used to steal my things and threaten me with a small knife he took from my father to keep me quiet. He was expelled from 2 schools, once for beating a kid until he passed out, and another because he set fire to an entire classroom when a teacher refused to change his grade. He was very close to our father, and when he died, Greg got worse. Much worse. To the officer, I give a lighter version of the story. I don't want to seem like I hated my brother. He writes it down slowly. And your mother? My mother is incredible, I explain, feeling a pang of emotion. She raised us mostly alone, doing her best. Our father was difficult. I can only imagine the pain she's going through, he interrupts in a calm voice, locking eyes with me. Losing another family member like that, only a few years after he died. It was clear in his eyes that he thought I had done it. Off my brother, you know. Then came the golden question. Can you recount the events of that night as you remember? I tell him it's mostly a blur, but I'll do my best. Greg did something stupid, like leaving the milk out or not washing the dishes. I confronted him, and he exploded, yelling. His voice sounded off. Maybe he had been drinking. He cursed and threatened me. I went to my room and, moments later, heard a thud, followed by my mother breaking down in tears. The officer doesn't write anything this time, and drops his pen. That's not the whole truth, is it, Miss Lana? His head tilts slightly, as if he's caught me in a lie. There were scratch marks on his arm, likely from a struggle, he continues. We haven't tested the DNA yet, but I have a strong feeling we'll get a match. He glances at my hands, where a few nails are broken at the tips. That doesn't make much sense to me, I challenge, though his direct approach catches me off guard. He gives me a knowing look and picks up his pen again, flipping through his notes. Do you know a girl named Abigail? Someone your brother was recently involved with? I gulp. He knows. So, I guess you do, he says with a smirk. She filed a report against your brother the day before his death. Did you know that? No, I didn't, I fake surprise. What happened? She reported an attempted murder, he reads from the file. Greg beat her so badly she was barely recognizable. She only survived because she managed to escape his car. That's disturbing. You're right. And you knew already, didn't you? She told us she warned you the morning he died. He leans forward, watching my reaction. I don't say anything. I start to wonder if refusing a lawyer was a mistake. And there is one more girl, Jenna, he continues. His ex. She had been missing for a few months, but we recently found her dismembered body by a dirt road. My eyes widened. I didn't know the details, but I feared this might have happened. We suspect there are more. He leans back, his posture hinting at sympathy for me. It's time to bring justice to these women. I know this is probably why you pushed him that night. Before he finishes, I stand up and ask if I'm under arrest. He shakes his head. Then I'll leave now, I say, walking to the door. I hope I've helped. I leave the station with tears in my eyes. Those poor girls. What had he done to them? How could he be so much like our father? My mother is waiting right in front of the main entrance, sitting on a bench. Her face lights up when she sees me, and we hug tightly. I'll never tell them what she did that night. How she saved me from Greg, as he held a razor to my throat, gripping my neck by the window, after I confronted him about those women. How she pushed him without hesitation, sending her own son to his death. How a few years ago, she poisoned our father to also end his endless cycle of abuse and violence. Mom believed it was over when she killed him, but it wasn't. Greg followed in his father's footsteps. Maybe now she can finally have some peace, though it came at such a high price. Let's go home, she murmurs, her voice heavy with sorrow, gripping my hand. And we go. And that was Everyone Thinks I Killed My Own Brother, But I Didn't, by Accomplished Low 7889. Accomplished low. Just low accomplishments? No high accomplishments? I'd say this is a high accomplishment. This story, right? Short, sweet, phenomenal, fantastic. It hits the right notes. It's got the right kind of pacing. It's got a good little bit of you kind of figure out what's going on exactly. There's some misdirection as well. It's great. It's just fucking good, man. I really enjoyed the story. It immediately makes me think of, funnily enough, Shutter Island, which is a really weird connection to make, really. But it's because it was a movie that kind of surprised you at the end, right? And that's kind of what happened here. Although I wouldn't say the surprise in this was massive, an insane reveal or anything. But the detail for it was good. It was real nice, and the interesting, amazing bond between mother and daughter in this kind of a scenario. Well, it makes sense. It's a maternal instinct, isn't it? Really, to protect your kids. I'd say paternally is probably maybe sometimes I feel like it's not as strong as a maternal one. In my own opinion, I'm not an expert. I don't have kids of my own or anything like that. So please, take that with a grain of salt. Obviously, these are my opinions, but just wow. I mean, even poisoning the father for God knows how long until he died, and then pushing Greg out the window. It's just wow. It's crazy cool. And the fact that they believe that the daughter did it, is but she's willing to take the fall knowing her mother will be okay. I don't know. I get the feeling the mother wouldn't exactly let her take the fall. I really don't know. I really don't know where this would continue if it were to continue. But I think as it is, it's awesome. So like I said, it makes me think of Shutter Island. It makes me think of Knives Out because, yet again, it's any kind of detective investigation mystery that has a little bit of intrigue and surprise and really well done. I suppose you could say there's Agatha Christie stuff as well, but those are a little bit more slow-paced. Although some of those do involve things like poisoning, very interesting developments, everything. So, I wouldn't rule out Agatha Christie either. Or it also made me think of one of my favorite shows of all time, Mindhunter, which is available on Netflix. Sadly, never going to finish, which really, really sucks. But it's because mainly that's full of these really awesome interviews between, in Mindhunter's case, a serial killer and the FBI agents, not exactly interrogating, discussing things with them. It helps them, profile people, and that's it's telling the story of where that all kind of began for the FBI, and it was awesome. Obviously, yet again, it's creative liberties and everything, but it's cool, and it's so good. It's so good. Shame it's never finishing. Really shame. Yeah. I was trying to think if I could think of any other ones when it comes to poisoning or a mother killing a father to protect their daughter. There's kind of movies and shows with that. there are, but they tend to mostly deal with topics that I'm not super comfortable with. You know, like child abuse, like that ain't cool. You know, don't that like that's messed up. So I'm not gonna touch those because that's messed up. That's totally messed up. Totally not cool. Absolutely not okay. These people are monsters. Anyway, moving on. Moving on. A great story. Honestly, I could, God, accomplish that if you do other stories. I gotta say, I'm interested. I'm super interested. This has been a fantastic one for the channel. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you all so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts down below. What did it make you think of? I'm really curious. I really want to know. I really want to know. I really do. God. Ooh. Oh, so good. So good. Ah. All right, everybody. Well, cheers. Take care out there. Beneath the junk, my mother found a new god to worship. My mother was a hoarder. Not the kind you see on TV, buried under mountains of trash, but bad enough that it changed her. Bad enough that it changed me. She had accessible bathrooms, was able to cook around the piles, even did laundry and dishes on occasion. But she had to sift through mounds of junk to find anything she needed. She started seeing mice, scattering roaches when she flicked on the light. I've been worried about her ever since I left for college. Worried it would get worse. That one day she would stack old magazines on top of the oven coils, flick a switch, and burn the place down. Maybe it's an only child thing to worry about your parents this much. I don't have siblings to check in, and my father's been gone 10 years now. She's all I have left. I know she has broken pieces in her brain. I know something dark happened to her. Maybe my father's death, maybe something even older. Something pushed her mental state like a twig, pushed until it snapped. She'd always been messy, but after Dad passed, it became so much worse. A couple of weeks ago, I tried to call her for the first time in a while. A robotic voice told me her service had been disconnected. I thought about a wellness check, calling the police, but I knew the cracks in her mind seeped deeper than just hoarding. She could be unpredictable. Besides, I figured she probably just spent too much of her social security checks on lotto tickets and Marlboros. Forgot to pay the bill. After a few days, I grew worried. I took the rest of the semester off, dropped my classes, and ate the fee. I bought a plane ticket home. It was not just about the lack of phone service. That was only the nidus for a conversation that had been long overdue. When I arrived, I thanked my taxi driver and watched the yellow blur disappear down the road. Immediately, I was shocked at the state of my childhood home. The grass was months overgrown. Milkweeds grown as tall as my hips swayed in the breeze. The chain-link gate rustled back and forth. It was a small home, 2-story. I found it odd how all the blinds were drawn, yellowed and sun-bleached behind the dirty glass. Several magazines still wrapped in plastic sleeves sat on the porch, and pink and yellow notices were stuck to the knob. I opened the mailbox. It was stuffed full of junk mail and past due bills. Mama, you haven't been keeping up on the bills? I sighed. I looked around. The whole neighborhood looked worse for wear now. Maybe it was the foggy lenses of childhood innocence crumbling away. Being back made my gut feel like a stone sinking deep into a pond. I approached the front door and rattled the handle. Locked. I rang the doorbell and waited. Nothing. I knew where she kept the spare key for the back door. I turned and moved down the steps. The neighborhood was dead. No familiar faces. Only me and the faint rustle of breeze and the distant sounds of low-middle-class suburbia. I walked beneath the awning of the carport, passing Mom's silver Honda. Dust covered the windows. How long had it been since she drove this thing? The spare key was hidden inside a fake rock. I told her before it was a bad idea, but right now I was grateful. The lock clicked easily and I slipped inside. Immediately, I was hit with a foul odor of decay. I had taken a deep inhale without thinking, and I turned and retched into the weeds. I suspected the worst. I thought about dialing 911, but I had to see for myself first. I held my shirt over my nose and slipped back inside. The house was dark. The hoarding had worsened since I last saw her. Still not insurmountable amounts, not enough to poison the bones of the home, but not good either. I saw him laying in the living room. Mr. Whiskers. Flies buzzed in the slits of light from the blinds. maggots writhed in his almost fully decayed corpse. I swallowed the rising tide of bile, my fingers shaking. Poor Mr. Whiskers. She loved that cat. A deeper pang of fear struck like the tip of a knife. If she had let this happen to him, something must be wrong. I grabbed my cell phone and called the police. They had a few cruisers out faster than I expected. A team of officers wearing blue latex gloves combed through the place. After some time, one sat me down on the front porch. She wasn't inside. They looked in every crevice, beneath every teetering pile. They were thorough and concluded there were no signs of foul play, no signs of forced entry. It was as though she had just vanished. "When did you see her last?" a mustached, graying police veteran asked me. His badge read Officer Mathers. "We haven't been talking as much recently. I've been busy with school, and she can be a difficult person to communicate with sometimes. It's been at least 4 months." The cop nodded sympathetically, scratched at his chin. "Does she have any friends, family she could be staying with?" I shook my head. I knew my mom could rub people the wrong way. She didn't keep friends around. Too much fuss. No other family, really. God, I could have been talking about myself. I couldn't tell if that hurt worse than saying it about Mama. "Okay, that about clears up my line of questioning. I do have one thing I need to show you inside." Oh, okay, sure." The other cops were filtering out now, returning to their squad cars. I followed Officer Mathers inside. He led me up the creaking stairs. Boxes and old furniture lined each side. The house had aired out a little, but it still held an underlying aroma of dust. The smell from Mr. Whiskers dampened but lingering. Officer Mathers flicked away a fly buzzing near his face. Upstairs, he led me to the master bedroom. Junk had been pushed to the far corner. Her bed was pushed to the opposite wall from where it usually sat. The old floral comforter was disheveled. Red lines adorned the walls and ceiling. Mad ramblings. Doorway to the 9 divine blessings. Partake of the flesh. The god of Drek. Between the writing, there were patterns. Sharp-pointed arrowheads interspersed with weaving circular lines. She'd really lost it. On the wall to my left, where the bed once sat, there was an outline in red shaped like a doorway, the size of something you'd see in a children's playhouse. Red arrows of all shapes and sizes pointed to it. "Oh, no," I muttered aloud. Officer Mathers walked over to the red outline and pressed a hand down on the gray wallpaper. Nothing. His hand didn't get sucked through. His arm didn't reveal any hidden hatch. "I've seen cases like this before. Paranoid schizophrenia. Delusions." "Hoarding," I interjected. "Yes, hoarding too. Look, you seem bright, so I won't lie to you. This doesn't bode well. If we find her, I'd recommend looking into treatment. How old is your mother again?" "She's only 50. If we find her." Those words lingered like smoke in my mind. He sucked in a breath, looking around the room. "And I hate to bring this on you at such a time, but I'm obligated to report this." He swept a hand at the mounds of trash. "It's breaking fire codes, city ordinances. We need it cleaned up for her safety. I'll give you some time, but when I swing back here in a few days, I want to see some improvement, or I'll have to get the city involved. Understand?" I nodded. "I'll spend some time cleaning it up." And I did just that. I dipped into my savings and rented a dumpster that was parked in the driveway. I bought all sorts of cleaning equipment. Mr. Whiskers was the first thing to go. His carcass had flattened into a firm disc, and I tried not to hurl at the sight of the maggots. There was a deep brown stain in the carpet where he had decomposed. It looked like something had been chewing at him. Once I tossed him in the dumpster, the smell inside the home immediately improved. I called around and paid the bills. Thankfully, the house itself had been paid off, so all I had to do was catch up on the utilities, which were 2 months overdue. I got the power and water restored that day. Then came the hard work. I tossed out broken lawn chairs, boxes of soiled newspapers dating back to the 70s. I managed to clean out the whole living room by the time the sun started to dwindle. I have a tendency to work through pain rather than face it. I laid down on the old musty couch, sweat dripping down my brow, when I heard a knock come from upstairs. I startled awake, staring up at the ceiling. It sounded like it came from up there, from right above me. I stood and moved up the stairs, turning on lights as I went. Most bulbs were burnt out, but a few flickered to life. I rounded the corner, cautious. The sound was coming from the master bedroom. When I rounded the corner, I saw the lettering and symbols inside the room glowed with a faint red luminescence. It reminded me of bioluminescent algae you'd see down in the crushing depths of the Midnight Zone. Where the small red doorway was outlined, there was now a yawning black mouth. Seeing it sent the hairs rising on my arms. I felt a deep sense of wrongness. Hard to explain what it is like seeing your sense of possibility slip away. The feeling of your eternal lines blurring. A skeptic seeing a ghost manifest right in front of them. What I was seeing was impossible. But there it was anyway, tearing a hole in my reality. I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed the bed and shoved with everything I had, grinding it across the floor until it thumped against the far wall, blocking the hole. I backed out of the room, which opened outward, and shoved a chair from the kitchen beneath the door handle. I settled back down on the couch, struggling to sleep, imagining what loomed upstairs. That glowing doorway. That tunnel that looked as though it went on forever, collapsing inward like a wormhole. I gazed upward. It came again from above me. My heart beat faster. I leaned towards the wall, hesitated, then knocked 3 times in rhythm. I felt nauseous. I slumped beneath the blanket I was using, trying to focus on my phone. I heard the bed sliding away from the wall, a deep groan of wood biting wood. Then the sound of heavy hands, feet, something on all fours scuffling across the room, pacing back and forth. A dog in a run. The doorknob rattled upstairs. I heard the hinges groan and creak under the weight of something flexing its body against the door. The battering resumed, the slap of hands shifting around above me. Some primal part of my brain, some loose neuron firing deep inside my skull, told me that whatever was crawling around up there was not my mom. That seemed to confirm it. I lay there for hours, teeth gritted, clutching my blanket to my chest. Irrationally, I stayed there all night. I didn't have anywhere else to go. The light cut into the room through the dirty glass. A ribbon of sun landed on my face. I woke up gasping, looking around frantically. The house was silent, except for the titter of birds outside. The night before felt like a fever dream. I slipped on sandals and pulled clean clothes out of my suitcase. After brushing my teeth and changing out of my sweat-soaked tank top, I moved upstairs. The chair was still pinned beneath the doorknob. I moved it aside and stepped into the room. The first thing I noticed was how the bed had been shoved back, sideways, upheaved against the wall. I knew I had moved it the night before. And there was no yawning mouth in the door. I decided the rest of the cleaning could wait. I needed answers. The blinds in the room were closed, but an orange glow crept in from the edges. I grabbed a staple gun and a heavy black trash bag. I stapled it in place, layering 2 more bags over it until not a speck of light entered. The room was drenched in a deep shadow. I saw the slight glow of red fill the space like a burning nebula. Some light crept in through the crack beneath the door, so I shoved a blanket against it. I heard a muffled sucking noise as a black square filled the spot it had yesterday. I wasn't delusional. It was there. Only this time, I smelled old compost baking in the sun. The fetid stench of an unkempt outhouse. I found a measuring tape and approached the doorway. I am petite, quite short. The only way I would be able to fit, though, was to crawl on hands and knees. I got close, the stench clinging heavy to the air. The doorway looked like an illusion, the folded edges seeping into the void like a coin spiraling into one of those mall funnels. I eased the tape measurer forward. It clipped through the mask of darkness, and I saw the wall shiver around the rattling yellow line. I continued to push it forward. At 4 feet in, I felt it touch something unseen, like a fishing lure scraping a lake bottom, a fisherman feeling for tension. I pushed it to 6 feet. 8. Suddenly, a rattling tension yanked through the line. Something grabbed the end. The tape whipped through my fingers, slicing a groove into my palm. I gasped at the jolt of pain. The tape made a rattling din as it disappeared into the void. The case was ripped from my hand, sucked into the wall. I shuffled backward, palm bleeding. Even out of sight, I heard the tape rattling. Then it shot back out. There was a pause. I stared at the gaping darkness. Something came whipping through the air, inches from my head, crashing into the wall with a whip crack. I heard the measuring tape clatter to the floor. I turned to see a deep wound in the drywall. The tape measurer lay smoking where it landed. No words were spoken, but the message was clear. Get out before I hurt you. A deep gurgling noise came from the small doorway. The sound of someone drowning, choking for air. Movement approached. Then frantic tapping against the walls. I rushed forward, ripping the trash bags down, and bathed the room in light. My pupils dilated painfully against the sudden brightness. The black doorway was gone. I wrapped a towel around my bleeding palm and dusted off an old first aid kit my mom kept in the bathroom. As I cleaned and bandaged the wound, a realization crept in slow and cold. The police were not going to find my mom. If there was any chance of finding her, it was up to me. The thought wrapped itself around my ribs like a wire tightening. Anxious thorns pressed inward with every breath. I am an intense introvert with obsessive tendencies. Doing this would require more from me than I thought I had. But what other choice was there? She was my mother, my blood, the last person in the world I felt connected to. And if she was still alive, she needed my help. The decision made itself. I walked to the local hardware store and bought the most powerful construction lights I could find. 2 caged work lights with thousands of lumens. I stopped by an outdoor outfitter and picked up a harness, carabiners, ascenders, descenders, a static rope long enough to drop through the doorway, and a high lumen headlamp. When I arrived home with the stolen shopping cart piled high with gear, a heavy fog had rolled across the neighborhood. The sky churned with a rolling tide of thunderclouds. There was a hum in the air. I noticed for the first time the for sale signs posted on the lawns around my mom's house. Maybe they too felt the ripple in the air. Maybe that was why the neighborhood was a dried husk now. The air smelled like gunpowder. I tasted ash, like the cinders of a forest fire. The mist swallowed the world whole. As I entered the house, a tail of fog curled in behind me. I felt like a diver standing on the white sand precipice of a great ocean cliff, watching alien shapes loom in the abyss below. I set up the construction lights in the master bedroom. In the background, the knocking came steady from within the walls, like dripping water from an old pipe. The air was heavy with dampness. A cineral hue seeped into the walls. The whole house felt like it was breathing. I flicked on the lamps, bleaching the room in merciless white light. I wasn't ready to go through the portal yet. I needed control first. Some measurement. Clearly the doorway was bound by rules. Light seemed to be one of them. The glowing runes, too. I rummaged through my mom's belongings. Boxes of junk, old papers, magazines, nothing useful. Hours later, I found a bound leather journal shut between the mattress and the bed frame. Alongside it, a bottle of ink and a fountain pen. When I uncorked the bottle, it smelled metallic, like blood, mingled with the scent of charcoal. The scrawls inside the journal were nightmarish, icons of people skinned alive, stretched out and pinned to columns like grotesque angels. Mountains of garbage rose around them. My mom's mind had not just been broken, it had been twisted, reshaped into something alien. I flipped pages, symbols that cut the paper with their symmetry, jagged words I didn't understand. The journal unsettled me. There was no clear information inside, nothing I could use. I set it aside and refocused on the goal, on my mission. In the attic, I found my father's old rabbit rifle, a box of .22 caliber shells. I grabbed a rusted 2-bit axe from the shed outside. Found his old Alaskan wolf trap, too, a monstrous thing built for bears and wolves. I drenched the mechanism in WD-40 until the joints moved smoothly again. Something else caught my eye beneath a pile of bird cages. A gallon of gasoline for the mower. I grabbed that too. A plan started forming in my mind. Reckless. Stupid. But it was all I had. My eyes flicked back to the scrawling on the wall. The God of Dreg. The thing I heard crawling that night. It wasn't a god. No divine being of filth and trash. It was a parasite. A leech. Hardwired to feed. I was going to make it bleed. The world outside dimmed, the sun shrinking like a bruised orange behind a blanket of clouds. Stacks of boxes loomed against the walls. I felt an ache in my collarbone where it had been pinned together with screws years ago. A memory from 6th grade. An old pain resurrected. My palm throbbed under the gauze. It took all my weight and several tries to set the wolf trap. When it finally clicked down with a heavy clank, I slid it carefully into place in front of where the yawning doorway would appear. I loaded the rabbit rifle, thumbing in the cartridges one by one. Small rounds, but they would have to do. I set the construction lights up, but kept them unplugged for now, ready to blaze at a moment's notice. I kept the gas can within reach. A last resort. Outside, the world was swallowed in a swirling white fog. Dew clung to the grass. I stapled more trash bags over the window, throwing the room into complete darkness. The faint red glow crept back to life. The doorway started swirling again. The wall beyond vanishing into the growing void. The stench of rotten wood and stagnant water filled the air. I heard the faint clinking sound of coins rattling in a jar. A frantic tapping started against the walls. The gurgling noise returned, low and wet. The blackness in the doorway swelled and pulsed. The walls vibrated under the pressure. I shuffled back, rifle aimed at the center. The red glow pulsed. And then it appeared. Not a face. Not exactly. It was an exposed nerve pretending to be a face. Skinless, spasming, muscle flickering with twitches. Bone jutted in the wrong places. A stretched and melting human face buried halfway through a horse's skull. Holes gaped where eyes should have been. It pulled itself forward on too many limbs. Stick-thin appendages folded like broken insects. The wolf trap clamped shut across its midsection with a sound that was half metallic clang, half meat rupture. A gout of blackened pus exploded sideways across the floor, steaming where it hit the old wood. The creature screeched. Not from a mouth. It screeched inside my head, a sound that cracked against my bones and drove straight into my spine. It thrashed, pinned, half its body still inside the portal, half stuck in our world. The trap held. It was caught. It wasn't dying yet, but it was vulnerable. It spasmed, yanking against the trap, slick limbs scraping and slapping at the floor. The iron teeth of the old Kodiak trap were buried deep, grinding bone and viscera. Thick black ooze poured from the wound, steaming where it touched the floorboards. It wasn't bleeding like anything natural. What came out looked more like oil or tar laced with static. It kept twitching, frantic, trying to drag itself free, but the trap held. I grabbed the construction lamp's cord, dragging it forward, inch by inch, until it hovered near the thrashing edge of the portal. My fingers trembled. The creature went still. It knew. It jerked once, violently, trying to pull back, but the trap only bit deeper. It was stuck. Snared. I shoved the plug into the socket. The lamps blazed to life, a brutal wash of white light flooding the room. The creature screamed, but not out loud. The scream rattled my ribs, cracked against my teeth, a deep psychic howl that vibrated the marrow in my bones. The portal rippled violently. The walls buzzed with heat as the red runes burned brighter. The light hit the threshold. The portal cinched tighter. Its edges trembled like a clenched jaw. The creature thrashed once more, a final desperate spasm. And then the wall bit down. The trap groaned under the strain. There was a crunch, wet and final, as the thing was severed cleanly in half. The portal's edges cauterized white-hot, sealing shut as the top half of the creature collapsed onto the floor. The lower half, still trapped, twitched once before slumping into a pile of glistening black muck. The stench was unbearable. Wet mulch and rotting meat mixed with something sickly sweet. It filled the room like a living thing, crawling into my nose, my mouth, my skin. The light bulb flickered once, whining under the strain. The portal spasmed again, glitching like a corrupted video feed. I raised the rifle, pressed the barrel to what was left of its twitching face, and pulled the trigger. The head exploded like a rotten melon, black ichor splattering the wall behind it. Wisps of smoke curled from the barrel. My heart hammered in my chest. The twitching slowed, but it didn't stop. The half-corpse slumped, leaking thick black fluid that puddled on the floorboards, bubbling and popping with tiny bursts of static. The wrapping on the walls pitched higher, faster. Maybe it wasn't the creature knocking after all. I clicked off the work lights. Slowly, the portal reformed. It rippled back into existence like a wound peeling open. There it was again. That impossible dark. Blacker than anything that should exist. The kind of black that swallows light, memory, and meaning itself. But this time, it wasn't empty. This time, the knocking was louder. Steady. Beckoning. I clipped the climbing rope to my harness, double-checked the anchor wrapped around the bed frame. The rope hummed faintly with tension as I tested my weight. I clicked on my headlamp. The cone of light pierced into the void, swallowed almost instantly by the darkness. The doorway pulsed at the edges, breathing. No more hesitation. I took one last breath, thick with sweat, gunpowder and the lingering stink of the creature, and dropped to my knees. The static whine clawed at my ears, like nails dragging across vinyl. I lowered myself forward, palms sinking into the blood-soaked carpet where the black fluid had seeped. I crawled through. The temperature dropped instantly. Not just cold, abyssal. It leached the warmth from my bones. The space beyond didn't make sense. Angles bent wrong, distances shifted when I looked away. I turned, expecting to see the bedroom behind me. There was only more tunnel. The door was gone. Or hiding. Ahead, a faint amber light leaped through the folds of the tunnel. Shadows slanted across the uneven ground. The walls pulsed and breathed shallowly like living tissue. I crept forward. The knocking grew louder, and I realized it wasn't knocking anymore. It was scratching. Fingernails dragging across soft meat. Close, just around the bend. I edged forward, every step a prayer. The tunnel widened, just enough for me to stand at a crouch. A sickly amber light poured from somewhere deeper, painting the walls in shades of old blood. I saw them then. Shapes fused into the walls. Organic lumps. Some twitching, some still. Sacks of flesh, breathing gently like sleeping lungs. The air was wet and heavy with the stink of rotten something worse. And then I heard her voice. Weak. Wet. Help. It came from deeper inside. I rounded the corner, and I saw her. She was stretched impossibly across the far wall. Her arms splayed wide, ankles twisted unnaturally. Her torso had been peeled open and spread outward, fused to the living structure of the tunnel like macabre wallpaper. Her head lolled to one side, lips cracked and split. But her eyes, those glassy, familiar eyes, locked onto mine. The sacks I had passed earlier were connected to her. Dozens of them. Some pulsing, some ruptured, leaking that viscous black fluid. One of the largest of these pseudo-organs hung just beneath her ribcage, fanned open like cupped hands. Something dark and wet pulsing inside. She was not dead. She was not unconscious either. She was aware, trapped in that endless moment, strung up and leaking into the walls. Her fingers twitched weakly against the wall. Not to escape, to warn me. She had been trying to reach me, to pull me in, or maybe to push something out. Something shifted behind her, deep in the shadows. A low, wet groan crawled out from somewhere within the tunnel. The sound vibrated through the floor and into my teeth. I froze. She was not alone in here, and neither was I. From the folds in the fleshy walls, a shape emerged. Thin, low to the ground, its body gliding rather than walking. Its head jerked from side to side with insectile precision, sniffing the air with a wet, pulsing snout where a nose should have been. Another shape followed. Then another. Glints caught in the beam of my headlamp. Eyes. Slits of light. Dozens of them. Crawling from every crack and fold in the tunnel. Some scuttled like spiders on too many legs. Others stretched tall, like skeletons stuffed into bags of leaking water. They moved toward her. They moved toward me. I ran. Fumbled the rifle onto my back, nearly tripped over my own feet as I sprinted to her side. Her eyes followed me. Her mouth opened, cracked and bleeding, and a whisper rattled out. End it. For the love of God. I dropped the gas can, trying to pull the rag free from my pocket. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the matches too. I shoved the rag deep into the can's mouth and struck a match against the box. The flame caught immediately. The creatures noticed. Their pace changed. No more slow stalking. They charged. I stepped back, tears cutting clean lines through the grime on my face. Her gaze stayed locked onto mine. There was no anger there, only pleading. "I'm sorry," I whispered. She blinked slowly, one last time. I threw the can. It hit the wall beneath her with a dull splash, soaking the area in gasoline. The burning rag hissed against the wet surface for half a second before the whole thing ignited with a low, heavy whomp. The heat punched the air out of my lungs. Fire raced up the fleshy walls, caught on the pulsing sacks, split them open like overripe fruit. Black fluid hissed and popped, fueling the fire higher. The tunnel came alive with screams. The structure itself shrieked a deep, wet howl that rattled through the walls and into my bones. The sacks along the corridor ruptured one after another, spraying black ichor into the fire, feeding the inferno. The light grew harsher, flickering madly across the uneven surfaces. Shapes convulsed in the distance, writhing forms caught in the rising flames. Their bodies twisted and buckled, silhouettes melting against the burning walls. Some of the smaller creatures screeched and collapsed instantly. Others tried to flee, gliding and crawling desperately along the fleshy floor toward me. I turned and ran. The tunnel was tightening, contracting like a throat. The walls pulsed and squeezed inward. The air grew heavier, hotter, choking. The static in my ears spiked until it felt like my skull would split open. My headlamp flickered but held. I could see the rope, dangling in the shifting dark ahead, my last lifeline. The creatures were behind me now. I could hear the slap of limbs against the burning, writhing floor. Fast, faster than me. The roar of the fire drowned out everything else. I reached the rope, hand slipping against the heat-slicked nylon. I grabbed it, wrapping it around my wrist, and began hauling myself upward. Below me, the world burned. I did not dare look back. My boot slipped against the blood-slick surface. My wounded palm screamed in pain every time it gripped the rope. I climbed anyway, forcing my body upward, dragging myself away from the maw of fire and blackness that gaped below. The portal was shrinking. The edges curled inward, burning themselves away. I felt the rope lurch once, sharply, as something heavy collided with the bottom. I did not stop. I climbed faster, hand over hand, heart hammering so hard it felt like it might explode. At the last second, I heaved myself through the threshold. I landed hard on the bedroom floor, scraping my elbow and knees. Smoke billowed out of the collapsing portal, thick and choking. The runes on the walls sputtered, flickered, dimming to dying embers. The black mouth in the wall shrank smaller and smaller until it winked out completely, leaving behind a charred, cracked patch of drywall. The remains of the creature caught in the wolf trap had started to dissolve, melting into a viscous black slurry that hissed as it spread across the floor. It smelled like burning oil and rotted fruit. The only sounds now were the creak of the old house and the distant crackle of dying fire. I did not move. I lay there on the floor, covered in sweat, soot, and blood, staring up at the stained ceiling. I was alive, but I'd failed her. I'd left her behind, even though she asked me to, even though it was the only mercy left. I sat up slowly, every muscle trembling. The air was heavy with smoke and the bitter metallic stink of blood. I peeled the gauze from my palm and winced at the angry red gash underneath, already oozing through the wrappings. I pressed the bandage back down and forced myself to my feet. The bedroom looked gutted. Scorched black fingerprints marred the walls. The floral comforter was coated in soot. The wood beneath the burned-out portal cracked faintly as it cooled. I stumbled downstairs. The living room was a mess of half-clean junk and overturned boxes. The front door hung ajar, letting the heavy morning fog seep inside in long, lazy tendrils. The sky outside was a flat, empty gray, the color of old bones. I leaned against the wall, my chest heaving. It was over. I had destroyed the portal. I burned whatever nightmare had taken root in this house. I had freed her, in the only way that was left. So why did it feel like I'd only peeled back the first layer of something deeper? I closed the door and bolted it, but the act felt hollow. There were no locks strong enough for what I had seen, no door thick enough, no prayers loud enough. I drifted through the house in a daze. Every corner, every piece of furniture seemed wrong now, corrupted by proximity. I spent my childhood here, running my hands over these same walls, watching cartoons on that same battered couch, listening to my mom humming out of tune in the kitchen while she washed dishes. Now everything felt stained, as though something muddy had left its fingerprints all over the memory of my life. And in that ruined silence, in that broken house, a thought wormed its way into the core of my mind. What if the fire wasn't enough to kill her? And that was Beneath the Junk, My Mother Found a New God to Worship by Skull Knitter. God, that's a cool fucking name, isn't it? It's great because it makes me think of a movie I'm going to bring up, actually. So, this story's phenomenal. I love the fact that it's a long story. There's a lot of great depth and detail, and a little bit of a bizarreness going on. No idea who the fuck Drek is. If that's a real thing, maybe in like folklore, mythology. No idea. But it's really funny. The first time I was actually reading it, I misread Drek, and I thought it said Derek, and I was like, oh, the god of Derek, and I'm like, oh god, that'd be it's like a terrible name for a god, right? But no, Drek is good. Drek's appropriate. The god of Derek. Can you imagine? Like, I worship the cult of Derekers. That's so fucking funny. No offense to any Dereks out there. It's not a very ominous or imposing name. That's all I'm getting at. So yeah, there's a lot of really great things about the story. I don't really feel like there's anything bad, in my personal opinion. I'm sure everybody else has their own ideas and comments and everything, and that's absolutely fine. I just fucking loved it. I just absolutely loved it, and I'm so glad I got to share it with you guys, because this is, I thought it was a really freaking good story, man. I really, really did. So it's made me think of two things very specifically when it comes to movies and things. And the first one is Hellraiser, naturally, because it's always, I mean, that deals with like cuts of pain or something like that. Wow, you know, it's been a hot fucking minute since I've watched that movie. I'm pretty sure, you know, I'm just gonna spout nonsense, and that's the problem. I shouldn't do that. But it's more about like the visceral detail and the horrifying things of like things beyond humanity's comprehension, right? But in a more like Cronenberg style way, you know, with the body horror and things like that, super gory and gross, and you know, things that just are wrong, right? So very much in that regard is the vibe I got. But the other thing that I actually also find really, really appropriate in this scenario, especially with the fact that like they're getting like molded to the walls and stuff like that, is the movie Aliens. Because that's the thing that the aliens do, is whenever they like take people, they would like fuse them up into walls, almost like Zerg and stuff like that. Maybe they do that too. I'm pretty sure they do for StarCraft. But so the aliens like, you know, mold them to the walls, and they you know, have all their eggs around nearby. So whenever the face huggers hatch, they immediately have bodies to, you know, do their business with to make more aliens. It's just like a horrifically vicious cycle, and it's gross and it's disgusting. And it's just like amazing sci-fi horror. So it very much made me think of both those things just like super quickly. Honestly, I probably could spend a fair bit more time on this, like ranting and raving, but it took quite a long time to get the whole video together. So I don't want to spend too much time. Oh god, excuse me. I'm gonna leave that in for you though, just for you guys. I'm also trying to work on like little blooper sequences and things like that, and just anything that I'm kind of taking out of videos. It's mainly audio. Mainly audio is what gets taken out, as you can imagine, because I do a variety of issues, burps included. so you know, if it's funny, I'm gonna try to put them in little blooper sequences for you guys, just so you can hear all the ridiculous outtakes, which are mostly it's mostly a lot of me clearing my throat and burping. So I'm not gonna have a whole lot of that. I think it's ridiculous, but certain parts I might say something just to be a little goofy. So it's quite fun. Anyway, this has been super lovely. I've had a fantastic time, and I sure hope you have too. Skull Knitter, thank you yet again for this fantastic opportunity. Go give them some love online, people, alright? There's always a story link in the description below. Go enjoy these stories yourself. Honestly, super great. Support the authors. Support them. You can support me too, obviously. That's super great, but I feel like it's kind of a given at this point, right? If you made it this far, you must fucking like me. 40 minutes in. So, yeah. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time. Bye for now. Do not mimic the culvert. My town's suburban legend of the culvert goes like this. In the 80s, some lady went missing after her husband caught her with not another man, but a creature. Some say he killed her, chopped her up into little pieces, and flushed her down the toilet in small batches until she was completely gone. Other, more ghoulish people claim she ran away with her creature/lover to the sewage systems on the outskirts of town where they lived out the rest of their days in foul-smelling bliss. Some swear they spotted the offspring christened the Culvert near the pipes it calls home. It's said to have a strangely beautiful face, framed by a wide set of horns or antlers, with pale, mottled skin, and a contorted figure draped in ragged, hand-stitched cloth. No video sightings of this creature exist. Even the local teens are too spooked to attempt a hoax. The legend warns that those who impersonate the Culvert are fated to become it. And yet, that's exactly what I set out to do. You probably think I'm an idiot for doing the one thing the legend warned against. And you're absolutely right. I'm well aware that this decision was absolutely the worst mistake I have ever made. So please, don't lecture me in the comments. I just wanted to go viral. I foolishly crafted a smooth, expressionless papier-mâché mask with lofty deer antlers attached, sloppily sewed some rudimentary clothes, and painted my skin a patchy mix of red, purple, and ashen white. I set out for the sewers early in the morning, donning my costume and an old camcorder. The sewer's leaky mouth gaped wide, foreboding. My dinky flashlight illuminated graffiti-tattooed walls. A rat scampered between my feet, disappearing into the daylight behind me. As I delved deeper and deeper into the twisting pipes, beer cans and condom wrappers gave way to more unsettling litter, a waterlogged teddy bear begging for euthanasia, a wayward mannequin torso stripped bare. I filmed every eerie detail with morbid delight. I could not ignore the ghostly call of music emanating from the depths of the piping before me. It grew louder the further I ventured. My shoulders grew tense, my jaw set. The unfamiliar melody grew deafening as the tunnel sloped wide into a large iron chamber. Dead end. When I sloshed in, the hair on the back of my neck instantly rose. It was adorned with dated but well-maintained furniture. A floral couch sealed in plastic, an ornate brass bed frame, and a solid wood kitchen table with 2 vinyl chairs. Seated there, facing me, was a woman. She was in her 60s or 70s, and markedly lovely. She wore a pristine bubblegum pink tracksuit with lipstick to match. She sat perfectly still, bolt upright with her eyes peacefully closed. Surely something was wrong, but I could not place exactly what. I approached her tentatively, but with each step, my stomach dropped further. I laid a hand on her shoulder, and her head lolled to the side at an unnatural angle. Of course, she was dead. There was no smell, no sign of decay. How long had she been there? I was about to turn, about to collect my camera and sprint for the outside world, when I felt the presence of someone directly behind me. I spun and locked eyes with what could only be the Culvert. He stood there, blocking the only exit, attempting a disarming smile. He was tall and gaunt, stooping slightly to avoid hitting his head. His skin was sickly and translucent with blue, purple, green, ropey veins spidering right below the surface. He did not have antlers, as my classmates had once detailed, but his skull did jut out on either side, perhaps a deformity. His ribcage bulged, shoulders protruded. His face was fine, almost handsome, with milky blue eyes that looked pained, pleading. I'm only human. I screamed. Loud. This sent him barreling towards me, fibrous limbs flailing about revoltingly. I stumbled backward, tripping over the corpse's stark white keds and slamming my head on the slimy floor. My eyes went blind for 1, 2, 3 seconds too long. By the time I got my bearings, he was upon me, groping, pawing, whimpering like a spooked animal. Pins and needles prickled across my skin. When I jolted up against him, he did not budge, and engulfed my writhing wrists and ankles in his enormous hands. But those frosted eyes bore into mine, beseeching me. For a moment, I almost felt bad for him. What does he want? Shh, he begged, brow pinched with concern and fear. He scooped me up and slid me beneath the bed as if I weighed nothing. He raised his palms toward me as if to say, "Stay put." I obeyed and held my breath as he rummaged around the room, turned off that hellish music, and preened the woman's corpse lovingly. They did bear a passing resemblance. Same black hair, delicate bone structure. My mind sprinted. What does he want? Why did he look scared? There must be something else down here. Something far worse. Maybe I should run. Before I could work up the nerve, he shuddered and let out a wheezing gasp. He dropped to his knees and cast one final pitying look at me, his bones snapping and twisting into something new, unrecognizable. The skull split under his scalp with a wet pop, forming mock antlers, stretching his thin scalp to a sickening degree. He screamed in agony as his eyes rolled back into their sockets, replaced by a glazed new set, shining and pitch black. I thought of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It stretched its limbs awkwardly and surveyed its surroundings. I was wrong. I despaired. That is the culvert. It sniffed the sour air indulgently, then spun around, jerking to a stop at the side of me. What choice did I have? I bolted. The culvert roared, an enraged, guttural vibration I felt in my bones. I risked a glance backward and saw it squirming up the sewer pipe and sprinting along the ceiling on all fours. It was fast, but I was faster. At a fork in the piping, I hung a right, then a left, then a right again, just as I had when I ventured through not too long before. Just around this curve, I thought, expecting to be welcomed with sunshine. As I skidded around the corner, my stomach hitched. More inky darkness. How could I be lost? The layout was so simple. I paused, but the culvert's soggy footfalls endured punishingly only moments behind. I pushed forward, lungs stinging with exertion, legs begging me to slow down. The tunnel stretched ceaselessly. I ran for what felt like hours, twisting through fork after fork, plunging deeper into the bowels of that infernal maze. I could not shut off the thoughts ricocheting inside my skull. You're dead. You're dead. Good as dead. I could swear the pipes were constricting, closing in on me. I peered over my shoulder only for a minute and clipped a rod on the floor, setting myself soaring forward and straight into the stagnant water below me. I crashed, hard, smacking my chin firmly on rusty metal. I must have blacked out, but only for a second. With a start, I pulled my face out of the oily water and gasped for air. It was in my nose, my eyes, my mouth. I blinked the mud out of my vision and was rewarded with daylight, not 20 feet ahead of me. I scrambled on all fours towards the blinding afternoon, but was grasped by the thing at the last second. It bristled me below the shallow surface again and again, but I thrashed with everything I had left. Its jaws split wider, its wet inside squirmed forward, pouring down from the skull and dangling mere inches from my face in pulsing purple tendrils. It wants to be inside of me. I clamped my mouth shut and gave one more violent kick, setting it slightly off balance. I clambered to my feet and lunged for the light with everything I had left. Then I was out in the secluded woods. I forced my dazzled eyes open, searching desperately for the creature. But as I had hoped, it did not follow me out of the sewer's yawning maw. I went straight to the police station, as any sane person would, but I tamed my story a bit for credibility. I've seen movies. The drive home felt eternal. All I wanted to do was crawl into bed and sleep for a few days. I didn't even care about the video. Didn't mind that I had forgotten my camcorder or lost that mask in the melee. I wanted no reminders of this awful day. I peeled off my wet clothes, balled them up by the back door, and scrubbed my skin raw in the shower. I yearned for sleep, but my brain kept buzzing. I padded into the sunroom, hoping to catch the amber sunset. That's when I saw it. My mask, soggy, twisted, its jaws ripped wide. A warning. The air hung thick and putrid. I spotted a trail of muddy footprints leading to the wobbly glass door. A floorboard creaked behind me. I whirled around, and there, through the doorway, I glimpsed the edge of a tufted antler, one beady black eye. My heart leapt into my throat. "Run for your life!" my brain screamed. And I did. I've been camping out in my car for the past few hours. I'm not sure where else to go but the shopping mall. I watch people meander in and out of the ShopRite, trying to clear my thoughts, but I can't escape the visions of that thing. I envy these people, and their ignorance of the evil holdup right below their feet. I'll just keep waiting until the police give me a call, but I already know what they're going to say. The sewers are empty. The street lamps just kicked on, and the parking lot is growing scant. Soon, I'll be alone out here. I'll just have to keep scanning the horizon, searching for the culvert. And that was Do Not Mimic the Culvert by Petite Omelette. Like a little tiny omelette? Delicious. Oh, I like that. So, this story's, It's quite interesting. I like this horrific macabre tale of like a bizarro creature that's made from love gone wrong, and it's just, well, I mean, first off, that's always just a creepy thing to, it just grosses me out. That kind of, like, beyond human, like, anyway, getting past that grossness. The culvert is an interesting creature for sure, because so you got, like it mentions in the story, this Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing going on, where it seems to have like a more docile, calm, humanoidy version, and then it's also got this far more monstrous version, which I don't know, obviously, how much control it has over, you know how long it's in each form, or whether it can actively switch between. It seems more like it can't choose to switch between. It just seems to be maybe certain conditions are met and then it happens, unlike Jekyll and Hyde, where it begins with the taking of the elixir drink potion weirdness that he makes, and then over time he no longer really needs it, and that's obviously a big part of the problem, is that he's kind of losing control over his own body, and Hyde is taking over fully. Which does feel somewhat similar in this, except for the fact there isn't an elixir or a drink or anything. Maybe it's just random. Maybe it's kind of like a werewolf thing. Maybe certain times a day, or whatever. Either way, rules aside, it's always interesting concept. This duality of I mean, men or of creatures or whatever. I think it's pretty great. I like the story. I like the fact that it's not crazy long. It's got enough going on that really kind of keeps you in. It does make me wonder how smart this culvert is, because it seems like it's somewhat dumb in the sewers, but incredibly crafty and smart up top, right? Like, because when it's in his home, doing the leaving the horrific message of the broken mask and everything, and it's like somewhat spying on him from within his own house, and our main character had no idea that they had broken in until obviously they saw the mask and heard the creaking floorboard. And you think if it spent probably the majority of its life down in the sewers, it would have figured out the best way to, get anywhere. It's weird that it's not like more capable of hunting its prey in its home environment. But whatever. That little thing aside, I'm really curious. I'm really fucking curious about this thing. It's not a creature I've ever heard of before, and if you decide to Google the word culvert, because I was obviously curious if it is indeed a word, you actually get some really interesting things that I'm really surprised. These are things that I've definitely seen quite a number of times in my life, and I never knew what they were called. So a culvert is a structure that channels water past an obstacle or to a subterranean waterway, typically embedded so as to be surrounded by soil. A culvert may be made from a pipe, reinforced concrete, or other material. In the UK, the word can also be used for a longer, artificially buried watercourse. Yeah, I've seen tons of these in my life, and I had no idea that was the word for it. Really, really cool little word. Really cool little word. I think it was also brought up, was the word in Better Call Saul as well, if I remember correctly. I think it's like an officer or something like that who's really obsessed with the word. He finds it really weird. Yeah, so really funny, really interesting. What did this make me think of? So obviously the fact that the word antlers always immediately makes me think of deer. In which case it could be deer gods, it could be just deer in general, whatever. Deer everything. Which always immediately makes me think of a game, funnily enough, or a number of games, a whole game series called Rusty Lake or Cube Escape. Because they tend to always have a lot of imagery of antlers and of deer skulls, and in some cases there are humanoid representations of people with animal-like heads and stuff like that. So that's always an interesting one. I love those point and click, super bizarro point and click mystery games. They're great. It also makes me think of Wendigos, because a lot of the representations online of Wendigos are kind of like this, where they're kind of deformed in a way. They're somewhat humanoid, but they're also deformed, kind of stretched limbs and things like that. But they tend to have like more of the deer head is a big representation of it. Not every single Wendigo, obviously, but a lot of it online tends to be that. It also makes me think of, funnily enough, TV show Has Been Hotel, because Alistair is, I'm pretty sure he's got some kind of a weird deer thing going on, especially whenever he gets super, super mad, he gets all the big antlers. He's also got like crazy tentacle tendrils, so that really lines up with this story in a horrific way, except Alistair is, I don't know. He probably would do similar stuff, killing people. I mean, he's certainly a killer, that's for sure. And then it always brings me back to the movie Splice, because well, Splice is just fucking creepy weird. It's a somewhat humanoid, which has I mean, I'm not really going to spoil the movie. It's pretty messed up. It's pretty messed up, and it really reminds you that science fiction is it should stay fiction. Some things should not be done, right? And Splice really reminds me of that a lot. The last one that it tends to make me think of is called The Ritual. And I usually think of The Ritual, it's funnily enough, story-wise, not really anything pertaining to this story at all. But it's just the fact that that the creature that is kind of stalking these guys based on where they're going and everything, when it kind of appears visually on screen, it's pretty fucked up to say the least. But he's got antlers of a kind. You could call those antlers on a human body mixed with big creature, horrific monstrosity. It's just an abomination. We'll just go with that. I'm pretty sure they call him Loki as well, which is just a horrific form, maybe like a Jotun or something. I'm not sure. Well, I mean, Loki's kind of a Jotun, isn't he? He's technically of the giant race, but we're getting into semantics now. Anyway, I thought the story was really good. I was certainly irked by things, but I think that's part of the world of horror, isn't it? Things should irk you. Things should make you uncomfortable. Things should make you feel strange. And this story certainly did quite a level of that. And it also made me very curious about the creature and how it all works, and if it. Well, I mean, so the lady must. I mean, why would he keep his mother there if it wasn't his mother? It must be his mother. He must have done some kind of taxidermy thing on it. I mean, I understand that. It's. I don't know. In which case, I suppose the real question is, what is the father? What creature is the father? I suppose that's the real question we should be asking. And so that's where I'm going to leave us on that. Let me know down in the comments below. What creature do you think is the father of the culvert? Because I'm really curious. I'm not entirely sure. I'll give it a level of thought, but I'll be honest with you, I might forget. Because there's a lot of things to do anyway. I've been Nate at Night. This has been super fun. I've had a great time, and I sure hope you have too. Thank you yet again, Petite Omelette, for this opportunity. It's always lovely spreading more stories online for people to listen to. And I hope you guys enjoyed the rest of your day. Take care out there. There's something in my shower. I showered a lot. Or at least I used to. My city gets pretty humid, and I live in a crappy apartment with no air conditioning. Add those two things together and you get a lot of cold showers. A guy's got to keep cool somehow, right? In the middle of June, I took a trip back to my hometown to visit family. It was nice to see everyone. Plus, my parents have a great HVAC system. All in all, I was dreading coming back to the city. But I had no clue that what was waiting for me was so much worse than just a scorching apartment. I arrived back in my city in the evening. Stepping through my front door, I was greeted by stifling heat. Immediately, I felt sweat starting to bead on my forehead, and my mind went straight toward the shower. Without even stopping to turn on the lights, I set my bags down and made my way down the hallway. At the end of the hall, I entered the small room on my right, the bathroom. I got in the shower as fast as I could and turned on the water. I heard a rattling sound, and the water began to sputter out of the shower head before reaching a steady stream. I didn't think much of this at the time, just chalked it up to the fact I'd been gone for the week. Maybe the water pressure had to equalize or something? I'm not a plumber. I was too busy enjoying the cool water to think about that anyways. I'd been in there for a few minutes when I felt it. Something wet touched my leg. I know, I'm in a shower. Everything's wet. This was different. This was something solid. The touch was light, almost imperceptible, but I felt it all the same. I spun around, turning towards the shower head and drain. Nothing there. I shrugged it off as best I could, insisting to myself that it must have been my imagination. The next morning, I went to take my pre-work shower, having mostly forgotten about the little incident from the day before. But I felt it again. This time, there was no denying it. Something wet had touched my leg. More confidently than before. The texture of the thing was familiar, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I forced myself to go to work, but found that I was completely unable to focus. That afternoon, I once again arrived home to an unbearably hot apartment, slick with sweat. This damn heat wave. Despite my hesitancy, which was quickly turning to fear, I knew I had to shower. So I came up with a plan. I would shower facing the drain, rather than turning my back to it like usual. Confident I'd be able to identify whatever was causing my problem, I stepped in the shower. But my plan didn't work. I was an idiot. I got shampoo in my eye. Instinctively, I shut my eyes and felt that familiar sensation on my leg. What's worse, I realized what the texture reminded me of. It felt like a fucking tongue. I decided that I'd had enough. I phoned my landlord, who, after a great deal of persistence on my end, agreed to come check the shower drain the next morning. That night was a sleepless one for me. I must have looked like shit. Because when he got there the next morning, my landlord, who typically doesn't seem to give a damn about his tenants, asked if everything was alright. I said it was fine, just that the drain was acting funny and that he needed to fix it. I'll be the first to admit, I was kind of being an asshole about it. But can you blame me? About 15 minutes later, he came out of my bathroom and told me everything was fine, that there didn't seem to be anything abnormal with the drain at all. I just stared at him. Obviously, everything wasn't fine. But what am I going to tell him? That something in the drain keeps licking my leg? Still, I didn't say anything, and my lack of appreciation must have pissed him off, because he left without saying a word. I was late for work by this point, but I didn't care. I left my phone in the kitchen and went to the bathroom. I got on my knees in the shower and just stared down the drain. I don't know what I expected to happen, but I need answers. And in the end, I got them. I'd been staring down the drain for maybe 10 minutes when I saw it. It started as a dim yellow slit running horizontal through the dark circle of the drain. The slit expanded until it became a full familiar circle. A fucking eyeball. A big one, too. It almost looked human, but was just too damn big. It quivered slightly as we made eye contact, almost like it was excited. I scrambled out of the bathtub and slammed the bathroom door behind me. I refused to set foot in that room or even open the door after that. For days, I didn't shower. Coworkers began to give me dirty looks and cringe when I approached them. But it didn't matter to me. There was no way I was going back in the bathroom. I snapped on the 6th day. That morning, I emerged from my putrid bedroom after another near sleepless night. I don't know what it was, but something in me told me to look down the hallway toward the bathroom. What I saw stopped me in my tracks. The bathroom door was wide open. I don't remember much of the day after that. I remember the intense primal fear that drove me out of the house into my car. I remember entering my apartment with the jerry can. I remember lighting the match. And I remember the sound of screeching tires as I drove to the last place I'd felt safe. I arrived at my parents' house a little after dinner time. They were surprised to see me, and more surprised at how rough I looked. I'd barely slept over the last week, was hyperventilating, and probably smelled like garbage that had been left out in the sun. My mom encouraged me to take deep breaths and try to relax. After that, we could talk about what had happened and why I was back. A nice warm shower would do the trick, she told me. My mom wouldn't take no for an answer, and it probably wasn't an option to decline anyway, given how I smelled. And honestly, the shower worked wonders. I felt the weight of the world lifting off my shoulders as I washed a week's worth of filth and grime from my body. Then, I felt something warm and wet wrap around my leg. And that was There's Something in My Shower by Connect Forever 3407. That immediately makes me think of Death Stranding. I love it. So, this is yet another great example of a short but good story. What I like about it is that it immediately kind of, there's a lot of intrigue. There's something in my shower. It's somewhat vague, but you immediately assume, well, it's some kind of a creature, some kind of an alien. Probably not a ghost or anything like that. You usually think it's got like a corporeal form, right? And sure enough, that seems to be the case. We don't know exactly what it is we're dealing with, but based on various descriptions, it sounds like it has a tongue, it has at least one eye, potentially tentacles. It has some way that I would imagine it can move through, not just a typical little shower pipe. Maybe it grew there, for example. Maybe that's where it was born. Or maybe it just has the capability of moving around, because by the end of the story, we kind of see that it turns out it's also at his parents' house. So I don't know if you can hear that. But basically, it seems like it can probably freely move around the sewers. In which case, maybe it's like it always makes me think of like tentacles, or maybe a form that doesn't even have bones, maybe like a slime or something along those lines. It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell exactly. I think a lot of things work for it, but it's good. It's a bit of a shame that we didn't fully learn a little bit more, and it's also kind of crazy that they decided to just burn down the place they were renting. Like that was maybe a little bit hardcore, in my opinion. I understand the logic of it, you know, but I do also think it's like it's quite a drastic jump. I mean, you only tried to get one person to help you, and obviously they didn't do a very good job. I'm not trying to bash every single landlord, all right? But I mean, landlords don't always they ain't always gonna. Do you think he's gonna like fucking take apart the whole shower and stuff? He ain't gonna fucking do that. Like, are you crazy? The fuck are you talking about? So yeah, to go from getting no help to immediately burning the place down, I thought that was a bit of a wild jump, especially because I mean it. I mean, for all we know, the creature is inevitably going to become hostile. It'll probably end up eating the person, would be my guess. I don't know. That's the thing. We don't know really any other details about it. But that's okay. Overall, I mean, it's a horrific premise, isn't it? The idea that when you're at probably one of your most vulnerable states and you believe you're completely safe and alone, that something is potentially licking you or touching you or something that you can't catch, something you can't find, and something that you wouldn't even know what it is, right? Just tons of horrific ideas that come with that. So I think it's a great concept. I thought it was really really good to be able to cover. When it comes to things that this made me think of, so it's weird because vividly in my mind, I kind of like see certain scenes of people in bathtubs or maybe a shower, but it's usually involving a drain with some kind of it's usually a tentacle like thing or something like I said without bones, like a slime or something, going up drains and attacking people. I weirdly couldn't find a whole lot of that. But I feel like vividly I've seen stuff like that, so I had to do a little bit of research. But I did find some interesting things that might give you some stuff to watch. So, for example, the 1988 film Slugs, which involves these like aggressive carnivorous slugs that attack basically a little town. Pretty great. It makes me think of like a different version of the birds, right? So pretty cool, pretty interesting. Haven't seen it. I'll probably end up watching it. We've also got a film from 2002 that I do remember seeing, but I don't remember super vividly, called They. And it's a Wes Craven movie, but basically there's a part where I think her name is Julia. She says she hears the shower running and investigates. She finds a black fluid erupting from the sink drain, and the bathroom mirror opens to an alternate dimension filled with mysterious creatures. So it's not exactly the same. It just involves one thing that is similar: a drain. So a little bit out there, for sure. Also, apparently the 2003 movie Dreamcatcher, but when I was reading all the stuff, I didn't exactly feel like I got the same kind of vibes. So I don't know why that one came up. One that I thought would be pretty appropriate though was it's another 1988 film, The Blob, which is it's a remake of a 1958 film, but they're a little bit different from each other. Although, so the 1988 one does have it does have this moment where I think it's a handyman, but he gets basically sucked into a drain in a diner by the blob and I guess digested as it were. So yet again, a lot of things made me think of like creatures in drains and stuff like that. And I suppose yeah, you could also say things like the movie Psycho, where there's the infamous shower scene stabbing thing, or you've got It as well. If you want another popular one that people might know, except it's yet again it's just the fact that Pennywise lives in sewer drain and he takes one of the kids out in the open from a sewer drain, for example. Just an interesting parallel, but not exactly a full-on connection, if you ask me. If you want another really obscure, funny one that goes back to a little bit of my youth, it's a TV show actually. It's called Real Monsters, and it's about these monsters, and for the most part, they're relatively friendly, even though they're monsters. But it's like how Tim Burton's monsters are kind of scary and also kind of goofy, right? And yeah, so yet again, they live in like a sewage system basically, and they come out and they tend to interact with humanity and things like that, mostly in goofy ways, but they're also meant to like scare people and shit like that, right? So yeah, really funny that. I also try to think like games and stuff, and for some reason, there's the some, but it's about like moving fingers in drains that grows bigger. It's like a cosmic horror one about a lost dog in the sewers, which I immediately was like, oh, well, that sounds like Lost in Vivo, and apparently no, it's called Rotten Flesh. I don't fucking know, but yeah, it's a lot of yet again loose, nothing that really made me feel like I could properly connect it, which is a little bit of a shame, but it is what it is. In which case, that opens up the floor for me to ask, well, what did it make you think of? Because I'd really like to know down below in the comments. Please definitely let me know. Movies, TV shows, games, comics, stories, whatever. I want to know what it made you think of. I'm really curious. This has been a fun little read, fun little video. Thank you yet again, Connect Forever 3407, for this opportunity. It's been fantastic. I'm Nate at Night. I've had a great time, and I sure hope you have too. I'm gonna get out of the heat. It's a bit fucking hot. So take care out there, guys. I'm a nurse who broke protocol to save patients. Now my skin is cracking open. Working at the hospital most days has its ups and downs, especially with the budget cuts we've endured these past months. It's gotten harder to understand what the administrators expect of us when we're stretched so thin. Honestly, it's a struggle for patients to even see a doctor these days. It's difficult to reconcile that a system meant to care for people so often just guesses. So often, it shrugs. What I've learned is this: the only thing that saves a patient anymore is a doctor bending the rules, or one of us nurses actually putting in some work. It started small, these unconventional methods. A burn victim came in, and we had no available rooms, no proper anesthetics. Just me and 3 other nurses scrambling for a solution. Then I thought of something. Nearly expired experimental medications for pain relief for chemotherapy, stockpiled for another department. The others hesitated. It was a risk, but it worked. The patient recovered. Slowly, they came to see things my way. Now, our unit reports a 5% better recovery rate than the others. But we don't talk about how. Not to patients, not to doctors, not even to new nurses until they've been broken in properly. Other cases had improvised solutions, but then came the ones that didn't. The ones where we had to decide, fast, who got pushed through and who wouldn't last the wait. After a while, the solutions got creative. The second time, it was a child. Leukemia, with the oncology unit backed up for weeks. His mother begged, her voice fraying at the edges. The boy's veins stood out like ropes beneath his papery skin, his breath wet and labored. I'd seen the signs before. He wouldn't survive the delay. So I took one of the spare chemo vials. It was expired, technically, but what wasn't these days? I diluted it, half dose, just enough to stabilize him until real treatment could begin. He seized within minutes. Not the slow, fading kind. Violent. Back arched like a bowstring, fingers clawing at the sheets. We pinned him down, shoved a bite guard between his teeth. His mother screamed. The other nurses looked at me like I'd handed him poison. Maybe I had. But by morning, his counts improved. The oncologists called it an unexpected remission. The mother cried in relief. Nobody asked questions. It was after the kid that I started paying closer attention to the chemo vials. The drug name was Unfamiliar Startup's logo, a snake eating itself. When I asked admin about the stash, they just shrugged. Probably a trial batch. Don't overthink it. The other nurses hesitated after the seizure. Too risky, they said. But the kid lived. And when I checked his charts a week later, his counts were cleaner than any of the oncology unit's regulars. So I took a few vials home. Heavily diluted, obviously. Just enough to test. I told myself it was research. That if I could pinpoint the right dosage, we wouldn't have to gamble next time. The microdosing sharpened me. I worked double shifts without fatigue. My hands never shook. I calculated dosages in my head faster than the pharmacy's software. The other nurses whispered about me. How is she always the first to spot the crash? But only Clarissa watched me with real fear. She was the one who clung to protocol, even when it failed. The one who panicked when textbooks didn't save a coding patient, then glared when our vials did. When admin announced random drug tests, she actually smiled. Joke's on her. The tests came back clean. Whatever was in those vials, it didn't metabolize like normal chemo. At the right dose, it was invisible. Perfect. That was until the first patient we treated showed up. Their skin had cracked. The old burns had healed wrong, leathery and discolored. No, these were deep, jagged splits, like something inside had grown too large for the flesh to contain. They ran from the clavicle down, precise as surgical incisions, following the spine in unnervingly straight lines. Then the smell hit. Sulfur, like thickened coppery blood left to rot in a rusted can. It clung to the inside of my mask, coating my tongue. One of the nurses gagged. Another, Clarissa's hands, started sobbing. I dragged her into the supply closet before she could hyperventilate. Her pupils were blown wide, her breath coming in hitches. "Look at me," I hissed, squeezing her wrist too tight. "You say one word to admin, to a patient, to your fucking priest, and we're all done. You understand? No severance, no references. Don't forget how the job market is like now. You'll create a black mark that'll follow you to every hospital in the state." She nodded, tears cutting clean tracks through her foundation. Good. But later, alone in the staff bathroom, I peeled off my scrubs, pressed my fingers to the base of my own neck, where the skin had started to itch. I gathered the nurses one last time. More patients would come. More cracks, more sulfur, more questions we couldn't answer. The vials had to disappear. Every record, every note gone. I made sure of it. What happened to that man was wrong, yes. Maybe even sinful. But what choice did they leave us? We wade through death every day. We kneel beside it, stitch it shut, send it home with a smile and a prescription. If we hesitated every time the rules didn't fit, the morgue would overflow by Tuesday. The meeting ended at midnight. I stayed behind. Security helped me load the expired inventory into the van. $100 silenced their curiosity. Now alone, I had to bury it. I stopped for gas. That's when the itch spread. It started at my neck, then slithered down to my elbow, slow and deliberate, like something crawling under my skin. I scratched until my nails caught on dampness, pulled back my sleeve, oozing, a wet, glistening split, barely a hair's width, but deep, too deep. I turned my head. The stench hit me like a fist. Sulfur and spoiled meat. It was back. I slammed my hands against the steering wheel. Once, twice. The pain grounded me. In the rearview mirror, the vials gleamed. I reached back, fingers trembling, and felt the crack widening beneath my collar. I made it home just as the itch became a fire under my skin. Parked crooked in the driveway, brushed past my husband's questions, my daughter's outstretched hand, locked myself in the bathroom. Strip, inspect, fix this. The mirror showed the truth. Jagged fissures branching from my neck to my ribs, weeping that same translucent ooze. The smell had already seeped under the door. A knock. "Honey? You okay?" "Fine." My voice didn't sound like mine. "Order the pizza." The shower hissed to life. I scrubbed until my skin burned, but the ooze clung like oil. My daughter's voice floated in, muffled. "Ma, why does it smell like matches in here?" Then the solution. A single 50 ml vial tucked behind the towels. I drank it. The reaction was instant. My bowels turned to water. The cracks hissed, edges fusing like melted plastic. Pain gave way to numb, blissful relief. "Ma, pizza's here." I leaned against the tiles, breathing hard. The vial had worked. For now. I started to grow nervous about how long I would need to take the vials to prevent the cracking. Maybe I could trace the manufacturer, find a generic, something to make it feel less nameless. But every search hit a dead end. No website, no FDA listing, not even internal inventory records. The department that originally asked us to store it couldn't explain where it came from or why. I kept searching Through pathology reports, procurement records, even my own tampering with the vials, and nothing. Every attempt to dilute the dose, to ration it, only made things worse. The cracks came back faster, deeper. One night they split me open across the abdomen. I barely made it to the bathroom before I vomited on the tile, choking on the stench. You just never get used to it, as soon as you catch a whiff. Work didn't get easier. If anything, it became a mirror where I saw pieces of myself in every body that came through. The morgue reeked of sulfur on the bad days. Then, without warning, time began slipping faster. A month ago, I realized the worst of it. I'm running low. My supply, what little I have left, might last 3 months, maybe less. And then I'd just be another corpse on the slab. Pathology have told me what they can't dispose of a body the same day, they make exceptions. Cut it open, drain it dry, bleach everything before the smell sets in. Apparently it works. I can't stop thinking, that's going to be me. They'll bleach me before my husband even gets there. He suspects something. He thinks it's another affair. How could I tell him this? Show him this? I just think about how alone I am now. Especially now that I'm the last one left. Everyone else quit, transferred, or disappeared. Clarissa, she didn't make it. I went to her funeral last week. I wasn't welcome. The contempt from the other nurses fouled the air. Before the service even started, I had to leave. The itch had come back worse than ever. Like something was clawing its way out every time I took the vial too late. Sometimes, I think there's no way out. But then, something happened. Last week, the final patient I ever dosed came back. I saw them in the ER, just a flash of a face through the cracked door of Trauma Bay 2. But I knew. Same hollowed eyes, same pallor, same veins that once pulsed wild with fever and fear. They were supposed to be gone. Not dead, just processed, discharged, out of sight, out of the nightmare. But they were back, sitting upright, legs swinging over the edge of the gurney, like they hadn't spent weeks with death curled in their lungs. Their eyes met mine, and they smiled. Not grateful, not kind. Something else. Something knowing. I couldn't breathe. I turned and walked until my knees hit tile. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I convulsed. Bent over the sink in the staff bathroom, gasping like I was the one coding. That smile kept replaying in my head, stretching wider every time, as if they knew what was inside me, as if they'd seen it grow. I didn't go back to the floor. I couldn't. By the time I returned the next day, admin had already filled out the paperwork. Leave of absence. Burnout. Perfectly understandable. The last veteran finally cracking under pressure. The others bought it. Why wouldn't they? They'd seen enough of their own breakdowns to know the shape of one. I even nodded along, played the part. It was easier than the truth. That I'd seen a ghost come back wearing flesh I helped rewrite. So now I'm home, resting, recovering. Just long enough to die in private. I'm not sure what else I can do to stop this. And that was I'm a Nurse Who Broke Protocol to Save Lives. Nope, I've already failed it. I've already fucked it up. Leaving it in. I'm a Nurse Who Broke Protocol to Save Patients. Now My Skin is Cracking Open. By Lex Kenosi. I thought it was Lex Kenobi at first, but Lex Kenosi is quite a cool name. Very cool name. No idea what it means, but probably it might be a proper name. I'm not sure. I'm thinking too much about it. So this story is quite interesting. It's quite interesting indeed because I've always enjoyed a kind of like a medical setting. And I mean I've worked in a hospital before, not as like a medically trained professional or anything, but because I did some IT contracting and conveniently it was in a hospital. But I've always enjoyed that kind of an atmosphere. It doesn't always make me the most comfortable, you know, and I can understand why people have a variety of like fears and issues with those kind of places. I could totally understand it. I know for me the longest time I had issues with dentists. I was always just really freaked out by it was usually because whenever I was a kid and I went there, I tend to be they tend to like put me to sleep they could do the stuff, and or like maybe laughing gas once or twice, and it was always just kind of just odd to me, right? But then as an adult, like, you go and you find out and you're like, I actually, it's all totally fine. My fears were irrational, which totally makes sense. Um, anyway, sidetracking aside, what I like is that, so initially upon reading the title, Broke Protocol, I was like, is she going to kill somebody to then take like their body parts and make other people better? That was my initial guess, because part of there's like the HIPAA oath and everything where they're not meant to cause harm to people. The whole point is they're meant to save lives as best they can. So that's why I was like, oh, are they gonna deliberately do bad to maybe do good, but non-voluntary kind of stuff. Like it's one thing if people are like, oh, I'm an organ donor. If I die, then you can use my organs. But it's different if they're like, we're going to deliberately kill this person. They're not an organ donor, but we're still going to use their organs. That would obviously be against obviously all the stuff. Just for an example, I'm sure there's a lot more complicated stuff to it. Obviously, I'm not well versed in all that, absolutely, and I can totally be wrong. But that's what I perceive. So that was my initial take going in, was that nurse was going to do something wrong, right? And granted, that is what happened, but it didn't happen in the way that I thought it was going to. What I found to be really, really, really strange is the fact that, so I think it was the pathology department, if I remember right on here, have this bizarro chemotherapy experimental vial, which later on in the story you find out that there's like zero records of it being there or existing or them ever getting it and stuff. So this magical experimental solution that appears randomly, I suppose, they must have used it at some point. I just find it weird that there's zero records of this kind of stuff. It's a little odd, and also the fact that clearly they don't know exactly what it's going to do. So I can understand why when you're super desperate and you feel like it was used for one thing, it might work in this regard. I can understand the logic for sure, and it certainly led us to a very interesting story. And it really, really did. I mean, the fact that it was able to kind of cure patients, sort of, but more like it put them on a different path, right? It gave them a whole different problem to now have, which gives them a period of goodness. And in our nurse's case, it sounds like when she ends up taking it, it makes her feel invigorated. Suddenly she can work crazy long. She has all this insane energy, and she's like hardwired in. She's like super locked into everything. She's operating at maybe like 200% kind of stuff, like just impressive shit. But then the only problem is the downside, where at the end of this period of time, your body goes through this insane destruction with the sulfur smell. It sounds like your body literally just starts, not just like dying, but like insanely destroying itself in some really vicious manner. And then the only way to stop it, that we're aware of at least, is to take more of this suspicious formula, right? It's really interesting, and I like the craziness that goes on in the story. I like the fact that they're doing it because they want to help as many people as possible, and it works. But then it causes new problems that obviously, if they knew there were going to be new problems, they probably wouldn't have done it in the first place, right? It's got some interesting layers, got some interesting depth. It's so many great things about the story. I truly did enjoy it. Especially because for me, I'm like, there's a fair amount of good logic here. There's certainly some silly things as well. Yet again, it's mostly just the fact that they don't know where it came from, the notes and stuff, and then she ends up paying the guys $100 for their silence about getting rid of bodies, and it's like, I don't know. I found that one to be a bit cheap, in my opinion. But I wouldn't fucking know. I'm just saying, if somebody paid me $100 to help get rid of a body, that might not be enough. Maybe I'm stingy. I don't know. I thought this was a really great story, and it made me think of some really, really different things, which I thought was quite funny, because I haven't really thought of anything that is exactly like this for sure. There's definitely things that are bits and pieces. For example, when it comes to the medical side of stuff, it makes me think of a certain medical shows that I've really enjoyed over the years, which is House. I've always really enjoyed House, mainly because he's just a bit of a bastard, but he's usually right. and it's pretty funny, and he's certainly not the nicest guy, but it's entertaining television, right? Or I think Grey's Anatomy is also another really popular one, which I think, if I remember correctly, is supposed to be a little bit more medically accurate, but yet again, I'm not entirely sure. I've only seen a couple of I've seen maybe like 2 seasons of it. Not really a diehard fan or anything like that. And my partner, she really enjoys Grey's Anatomy, so that's how I knew about it. God, I did have another one. Hmm. I've lost it. I'm sure I had a third one, but I've lost it. Oh well. Let's see. What else it makes me think about is interestingly enough, one of the first things that came to mind was because the whole idea of these vials, and it strangely came into my head about about a song specifically from Sweeney Todd, which is Pirelli's Miracle Elixir, even though that's to do with like hair, but it's just because they're trying to sell this miracle thing that nobody knows what it truly is. It's a snake oil kind of shit. You know what I mean? I just found that to be really a weird connection in my head. But the one that I think is perhaps the closest, which funnily enough is also from another musical. The musical is Repo the Genetic Opera. I'm leaving that in. I don't care. And it's about because one of the biggest things in Repo is this highly addictive painkiller that I guess it's like strong like morphine or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. They don't exactly say it, but it's called Zydrate. And there's quite a number of songs about Zydrate because it comes in a little glass vial. People try to buy it off the streets, like black market style, but then they can also buy it legally, which is insanely expensive, which is why a lot of people don't try to do that. But a lot of people really go through like expensive surgeries and stuff like that in this genetic opera, and so usually they'll have to buy Zydrate. And obviously, people get really addicted to Zydrate, which then means they want to buy more Zydrate because, yet again, it's meant to be an addiction. It's meant to be a thing that people are going to constantly buy, which is why the company that makes it, or I think sell it or whatever, they sell it for an insanely high price. But usually, it's also required for surgical practices because you don't want them doing surgery or having the repo man come at you and you don't have painkillers. You're going to have a bad time. Yeah, no, it's a great musical. Really dark and fun, and it's a musical. So if you don't like musicals, you probably wouldn't like it. Yeah, those are the kind of things that came to my head. I thought this was super interesting, and this has been it's been an awesome little read. I really enjoyed it. Lex Kenosi, thank you yet again for this fantastic opportunity, and thank you all so much for watching. This has been super fun. Let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know what this made you think of. Let me know if you have any perhaps. Maybe this makes more sense to you in a different way. I'm really curious. I'm really curious of your interpretations and your ideas and your takes and just your opinions in general. All right, everybody. Well, I'm going to hop off for now. Just for now. Shout out to these cool peeps. Seriously, we wouldn't have got this far without them. You're all amazing. I love you all so much. Honestly, it's tremendous work you do. Supporting the channel, keeping us afloat. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. You too could become a cool peep for just $1 a month. What that's going to get you is 2 weeks early access to future videos. It's also going to get you exclusive members-only content. And there might be extra goodies coming along the way. What can I say? I'm just charitable like that. You can also show your support by tipping through either Super Chats, Super Thanks, both on YouTube, or through my Streamlabs.com URL, which will be in the description of future videos below. Cheers for now, guys.